Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is armed with intelligence and unique Dojutsu part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A truck's horn, blinding headlights, then a flash of pain. That was the last thing the man remembered before ending up in black floating darkness. So this is death. He had to admit it was kind of nice. It was a lot darker than he had imagined, but it was peaceful and comforting. What would his wife think when she found out? He'd only gone out to get them something to eat. The crash hadn't been the man's fault. That light had been green. But whose fault it was wouldn't matter. His partner would be crushed when she received the news. The man's entire 34 years of life had ended suddenly without warning. His love, his family, all his goals and dreams. It was all gone. The only question was, what now? He started to hear a rhythmic thumping noise. As he listened, it got louder and louder. A smaller, faster thumping noise also came into existence. The man clenched a slimy fist in order to concentrate. Wait. Slimy fist? He could have sworn the last time he checked he was nothing but air. Why was his fist slimy? Why couldn't he breathe? Warm tissue clenched around his body from all sides. In the distance, he could hear a woman screaming. The pressure got harder and harder, only pausing briefly at times. It felt like his head was going to explode. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the pressure released, and sharp cold air hit his wet form. Bright light hit the man's eyes, causing him to quickly close them, as he took in a few gasps of air, shivering in shock. Giant, rough hands handled him gently, laying him face first down into soft, warm flesh. Panicked and a bit bewildered, the man struggled feebly against the embrace. Was this what he thought it was? What in hell was going on? It's not that he hadn't ever contemplated reincarnation or life after death. But reincarnation would come with some sort of brain wipe, right? And if this was the afterlife, why was he born like a mortal? A soft, deep voice spoke behind him, followed by a choked-up crying one from a person above. The crying made his body shake, leading the man to conclude that he was resting on the crying person's chest. The soft arms and hands of the crying person continued to hold him tight as a soft kiss was placed on his forehead. His baby brain was in a slight fog, so the soft mumbles said in his ear afterward were hard to grasp. But when the fog cleared, he realized that it wasn't just his brain that was making things incomprehensible. The person was speaking in a different language. Great, the man huffed internally. This was just what he needed. He really wanted to figure out what was going on. He sighed, moving his lethargic tongue around uselessly. It didn't matter. Even if he did know the language, it would be some time before he could speak. Questions couldn't be asked. Was this how all babies felt? Helpless in their inability to communicate. A panic thought struck him. Did all babies remember their past lives? Did this mean that he was going to lose his memories at some point? The man could handle a brain wipe, but slowly losing memories seemed like torture. He'd always had an excellent memory, and cared about the people and experiences of his past. Dementia was one of his worst fears. He didn't want to suffer through it. Exhaustion overcame the former man as he fell asleep in the warm embrace of the person holding him. Oh well. There was no use stressing about it. Dementia might be natural and peaceful for a baby. When he forgot, he might not remember that there was something to remember. Hopefully, this was the case. He would just have to take life as it came. Time passed, and as months went by, the man's worries of dementia faded away. If anything, his mind was getting stronger. He could now process and reflect on things far better than before. Gone was the constant exhaustion and fog that often plagued his infant mind. He could also crawl around now and see things in clear, vivid color and detail. He was glad to get to this stage. The man never realized that human babies were basically blind for the first few months. Not being able to move made him feel even more helpless. Luckily, the people that belonged to the male and female voices at his birth were both gentle and kind. The man started to think about these people as his mother and father, as that was who he assumed they were. His mother is very attentive. He rarely had to cry to be fed, changed, or moved around during his early stages, and his father would often come in and hold him. His father was a strong, olive-skinned man who dressed like an old-fashioned Japanese farmer. The style of clothes was loose plain robes with sandals and a straw wide-brimmed hat. His mother wore a kimono. She had a small elegant figure with smooth tan skin that was lighter than his father's. Neither looked Asian, which was strange, but what really surprised him was the fact that his mother had purple hair. It was long and beautiful, showing no signs of bleach or dye. After a while, he started to come to terms that it was indeed genetics. His hair was also strange. It was completely black like his father's except for two random strips of purple the same color as his mother's. His mother liked to swirl the colored pieces whenever she held him in front of the mirror. The baby had a feeling that the color made the woman happy. His body, to his great relief, was male, like in his previous life, so the hair sections were a small piece of similarity between them that made his mother fuss over it giggly. His eyes, however, were a different matter. It was hard to catch, but as time went on, a hint of worry and concern would appear on his mother's face whenever she looked at them. His father was more obvious about it and would sit him down and examine his eyes intently at times. The former man became curious and a bit worried about this behavior. Was something wrong with his eyes? Once he was able to crawl, he decided to crawl into his parents' bedroom and stare into their full-length mirror to see his eyes for himself. He was only 5 months old the last time he saw them. At the time, he didn't notice anything wrong. Looking at his eyes now, though, all he could do was stare in shock. His eyes had 2 different colors in them. The center of each iris was ring bright red and the outer part was ring bright purple. Before it was a brown muddy mixture of the two. The former man knew it took a while for the true color of a baby's eyes to develop, but this was definitely unusual. At least it was unusual for genetics on Earth, and if his parents' behavior was any indication, it was unusual here as well. But what was the big deal? Why worry? If anything, his parents should be fascinated. He was fascinated. He could see just fine, and the outer rings of his eyes matched the purple highlights in his hair perfectly. He thought it looked kind of cool. He crawled back to the living room and sat down by his toys. What kind of world did he get reincarnated into? This was a question the man found himself asking the air more and more. Weird colored features and old-fashioned Eastern styles aside, something about this place felt different. The energy level was higher. He could feel it vibrate within his very being. Both his parents had their own unique energy. The closer they got, the stronger he could feel them. Plants and animals also had an energy signature. It was like the energy level of nature was turned up to 100, being so strong it was almost tangible. The toddler decided to meditate to try to figure out more. In his former life, he had learned many different techniques of meditation to connect to the planet's energy and to find truths about himself. He wasn't a hippie in all aspects, but his wife often called him one. Closing his eyes, he focused on the energy within him. It was weird to feel things so clear and plain. On Earth, it took deep concentration and focus to get to the point of being able to feel even a hint of spiritual chakra points and energy nodes. Here, he could actually see a vision of energy. It was so strong. His body had a main core of energy. It was centered in his stomach, and energy flowed out from this point to many different veins and channels. The largest veins and channels flowed down his arms and to his fingertips. Focusing further, he felt that there were also a great number of small intricate energy paths that led up to his eyes, more so than any other organ. His brow furrowed. Why were there so many in that particular area? Every other organ had only 1 or 2 paths. His eyes, however, had 5 channels each, the channels curling around each eye like claws. Something about it seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. Then he remembered. It looked a lot like something he saw in an anime once. In a show called Naruto. It looked like the chakra channels that would bulge around the eyes of the Hyuga clan when they used the Byakugan. The veins around their eyes looked very similar to the energy channels he was seeing right now. He broke out of meditation. Did this mean that he had a dojutsu like the Byakugan? Was that why his eyes looked so strange? It seemed silly to even consider the possibility. The concepts in Naruto were fiction. The show wasn't based on science or reality. But didn't he already believe in life energy? It was why he was so drawn to meditation and nature in his previous world. Hadn't he already come to the conclusion that it was a lot stronger here? That it was almost tangible? His eyes darted to his mother as she came into the room. Come to think of it, the old-fashioned Japanese style, non-Asian features, and bright-colored hair all fit into something you would see in the Naruto universe. Could it be possible that he was actually in the world of Naruto? Kiyoshi, are you all right? His mother asked, looking at him in concern. He must have looked a bit pale. He knew his thoughts were ridiculous, but now that he made the connection, he couldn't get it out of his mind. Okay, maybe this world had elements similar to Naruto, but there was no way this was Naruto. That story came from someone's imagination. It didn't actually exist. His mother still looked concerned, so he gave her a small smile to show that he was okay. The young toddler was still too small to form words, but he understood her easily enough. If not, he could always deduce things by her expression. He then glanced away and began to play again with his toys. Playing with toys was a common pastime for the reincarnated soul. His parents treated him like a normal toddler, so the former man tried his best to act like one. He didn't know if deceiving them was right, but there wasn't much he could do in this body, and he'd rather not be examined more than he already was. He felt guilty when he nursed, or his mother changed in front of him, but what else could do? He didn't exactly have the ability to clearly communicate that he had the mind of a 34-year-old man. And if he did convince them, then what? Would his parents see him as a demon possessing their child? Would they stop loving him? He shook his head. No. He would keep his past secret. He had to get more information on his situation first. Getting more information was slow going. So far, the only people he had interacted with were his parents. Wherever they were, it was secluded. Thick forest, flowers, meadow grass, and a barn and garden were the only things that he could see when taken outside. He got the feeling that they were far away from civilization. His parents weren't normal carefree farmers. His father was graceful and intimidating in a way that didn't fit his simple clothing, and his mother always examined the area before she took him outside. It was like they were hiding from something. The former man had a feeling that his parents appreciated his calm and quiet nature. It drew less attention. Kyoshi meant silent in English. This was the name his parents decided to give him. They would often call him Silent One in endearment simply due to the fact he hardly ever made a sound. The toddler knew that most babies would cry or mumble to themselves on occasion, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Back in his old world, he had never participated in random chatter. He preferred listening over talking and would only speak when he felt it was necessary. This behavior carried on into this world. Many months passed, and Kyoshi was now 2 years old. The young boy kept up his meditation and experimented with moving energy around in his body. He realized that with practice he could take energy from one area in his body and direct it to someplace different. As he grew older, he also noticed that his energy core was becoming larger and denser, and that his main vein channels growing and stabilizing into stronger, thicker streams. Smaller channels started to sprout from these main streams and moved out to the surface of his skin, spreading out like spider webs, interconnecting to one another. Others branched out into his muscles or fused into and wrapped around his bones. These smaller channels, unlike the main ones, did not automatically fill with energy. It was only because of the faint energy signature that came from the energy molecules which lined them that he knew they were there. Curious, he picked a main energy channel and tried to direct energy into one of the small vacant ones branching from it. He pushed only the smallest amount, not knowing what the result would be. He was rewarded by seeing a faint blue flash of light appear and then fizzled out along his arm. The energy seemed to have traveled across and out of his arms simultaneously. A large grin spread across his face. He had managed to bring what he felt inside to the outside into visible form. His grin quickly faded when he noticed how quiet it was. His mother had stopped humming in the kitchen. The small boy looked up and saw that his mother was standing in the doorway, staring at him, eyes wide in shock. "Kyoshi, did you just do something?" she asked. Kyoshi blinked. Should he tell her the truth? Others in this world might have this ability. If so, then he could use some guidance. Even if he was unique, he couldn't keep it a secret forever. There was so much to learn and discover. Now that his energy experiments were visible, they would be a lot harder to hide. He did the technique again in answer. His mother flinched slightly on seeing it and stayed silent for almost a minute afterward. Finally, she bit her lip and sighed. "I'm going to need to tell you, father, about this," she said, sounding weary. "You are far too young to be able to do that. And how do you even know how? You have never seen it done before. It takes a great deal of focus and concentration." Her voice was now flustered. Kyoshi assumed she was speaking out her inner frustrations and not actually asking. He couldn't answer her anyway. His mother picked him off the floor and looked at him sternly. "Don't do that again until I say to, okay? It's dangerous, and I don't want you to get hurt." Kyoshi looked away from the imploring eyes, neither agreeing nor disagreeing to the request. There was no way he was going to stop his experiments for any long length of time. At least his mother didn't seem frightened by what he could do. She was only freaking out because of his age, not at the energy's existence. That meant that he was not alone in the ability. Later that night, his father returned from outside, and his parents had a private conversation after he had been put to bed. Kyoshi couldn't make out what was being said through the door from his crib, but their whispers were harsh and a bit heated at times. The next morning his father was the one to get him up. "Kyoshi, you are going to come with me today," he said bluntly, lifting him into his arms. Kyoshi had a feeling of foreboding, as his father carried him out of the house and towards the barn. This was the first time his father had ever done such a thing. When they entered the straw-filled area, the donkey and a cow looked up at the newcomers. Kyoshi stared back, and then looked around at all the other animals and tools curiously. He wondered what his father had planned here. They headed to an empty stall in the far corner, and stopped by a long metal trough. "Kyoshi, what I'm about to show you is a family secret. It is something that you should never tell anyone. Do you understand?" Kyoshi nodded, confused but also curious. His father smiled and then sat down in the trough, bringing Kyoshi with him and shifting him on his lap. Kyoshi found this even more strange. He watched intently as his olive-skinned father flipped up a metal hatch to the side and pressed in a code. Pressing enter, the floor opened up and the trough sunk into the ground, causing Kyoshi to grab onto his father's legs in surprise. Once they were past the level of the floor closed above them, and they were swallowed in darkness. Bright lights then turned on, brightly illuminating a large underground bunker. The trough continued to descend, the room being a large dome that had a ceiling more than 20 feet high. When the trough reached the ground, his father got out and pressed another button, causing the trough to go down into the floor and to be covered with a metal slab. "Kyoshi, do you know what a samurai is?" his father asked once the grinding of the mechanical mechanism stopped and silence permeated the room. The question caused Kyoshi to tear his wondering eyes away from examining the place and look at the person holding him. He shook his head in answer. Kyoshi had heard the Japanese word before on Earth, but he didn't know what the word would mean here. He had figured out long ago that his parents spoke Japanese, but not everything correlated with the culture. "Samurai are people who can do many amazing things," his father said. "They were once great warriors with honor and pride. They protected those who needed to be protected, and used their power to bring peace and harmony to the world. A true samurai is deeply connected to energy and life. Kiyoshi looked at his father in wonder. Energy and life? Power? This was something he was interested in. His father sighed and set Kiyoshi down. The boy's bare little toes curled against the cool concrete as the large man crouched down in front of him. The samurai aren't all that they used to be, he continued solemnly. Many have become weak, and others now use their power to destroy things and hurt others. I used to be a part of it, but I left. His father looked sad at this and continued. Your mother left her people for much of the same reasons. Her people are called shinobi. Shinobi are dangerous and bloodthirsty and care little about others. Their focus is mainly on power and money. They use energy much like the samurai can. This energy is called chakra. It is what came out of your arm yesterday. Do you remember that? Kiyoshi nodded. Well, I want you to do what you did in front of mother. Okay, Kiyoshi nodded again, a bit nervous. Did this mean that his father was going to teach him about chakra? He didn't want to mess this up. He really wanted to learn more. Focusing his mind, he felt the energy inside him and pushed it out. This time the action felt almost automatic. His father smiled after the blue glow had faded on his arm. That's very impressive. Not very many people can do that at your age. Kiyoshi bit his lip, remembering that his mother had said the same thing. He couldn't help but think that he had cheated. He had 34 plus 2 years of life experience. Technically that made him 36. Still, his new body did have limitations. It was the same as any other toddler. He allowed himself to smile at the praise. There might be something to be proud of. Kiyoshi, would you like to learn how to do more things with chakra? His father asked hesitantly. Kiyoshi nodded enthusiastically. His father closed his eyes if wishing for a different answer. Okay, I'm not sure how to explain it. His eyes opened, and he studied him. But I know you are an intelligent boy. Kiyoshi's heart beat a bit faster at the scrutinizing gaze. He knew his father saw him as a genius, but at times like these, he worried that the man would see the truth. His father sat down and crossed his legs in a meditative pose. Sit down, Kiyoshi, and listen carefully. Kiyoshi nodded and sat down across from the large man. His father then began explaining. Chakra can take many forms, he said. What you made come out of your arm just now is called pure chakra. It is your chakra's natural state. With manipulation, you can transform pure chakra into many different things. Your chakra is located in the center of your core, and chakra channels branch off from this core to every part of your body. Samurai and shinobi use chakra to enhance their body and weapons. Chakra can also be used as a long-range weapon. Seals are usually required to perform techniques. Shinobi, in general, have more knowledge in hand seals, and samurai have more knowledge in written seals. When learning a technique, seals are usually required to help guide your chakra into the right patterns for proper transformation. With great skill, it is possible to perform complex techniques without seals, but not many can. Seeing that his son was grasping what he said, the man continued. For now, I think it is best to start you on basic body enhancement. Basic enhancement does not require seals. It involves simply pushing pure chakra into different parts of your body to improve your speed, stamina, strength, and durability. Almost all ninja and samurai know how to do this. It is one of the easiest things to learn. Kiyoshi nodded, eager to get started. For the next hour, his father had him practice pushing chakra from his core into different muscles. As he did so, his father congratulated him. After an hour, Kiyoshi was exhausted. His chakra reserve was a quarter of its normal size, and his head drooped. His father laughed and picked him up, saying that they were done for the day. Kiyoshi fell asleep in his arms. Kiyoshi's father continued to bring him down to the bunker every day after that. Once he had a few hours of training, his father would then return him to the house. The first week was spent on increasing his speed and strength. This was accomplished by exercising physically and filling his muscles with chakra. The next week Kiyoshi learned how to strengthen his skin. Every morning his father would ask if he wanted to train, and every day he portrayed his eagerness. It took Kiyoshi a month to learn all the basic aspects of body enhancement. His father then asked what he wanted to learn next. His first choice was to learn kenjutsu. This consisted of techniques related to the sword. His second option was to learn hand seals. His father admitted that he didn't know a lot, but could teach him a few signs. His third option was to learn written seals. In this, his father was very skilled, and his fourth option was to learn taijutsu, which was basically hand-to-hand combat. A picture of a sword, hand, written seal, and two stick people fighting was laid out so that he could point to which one he wanted. Kiyoshi still couldn't pronounce words well or explain anything in an advanced vocabulary. His father knew this, which is why he tried to make things easier when possible. Kiyoshi didn't pick any of them. He thought they all sounded good, but none of them was what he really wanted to do. For the past month, the boy found himself continually thinking about his eyes and the number of chakra channels that surrounded them. Pushing chakra into every other part of his body day after day, he often wondered what would happen if he pushed chakra into his eyes. His father had never asked him to do it. Kiyoshi decided he had to try. If he really had a dojutsu, then the mysteries it held were bound to be useful and fascinating. His father had made it very clear that he wasn't allowed to use chakra outside of the bunker. It was dangerous apparently. So he had to do it here. He closed his eyes and concentrated on the chakra channels surrounding the two organs. His father had asked him what he wanted to do, so he was going to show him. Using increasing pressure, he pushed the chakra from the larger channels around his eyes into the smaller branching ones. Kyoshi, what are you doing? His father asked a bit tentatively, feeling the chakra level shift. Kyoshi ignored him. He could feel the chakra now fully infused in his eyes, and he opened them, looking around the bunker. What he saw was disappointing. Everything looked the same. His father's expression, however, changed. The man was staring at him wide-eyed. Kyoshi, your eyes, they are glowing. Huh. Okay, so something did happen. His father's reaction confirmed that whatever was happening wasn't normal. Maybe his eyes did have an ability. They just needed more chakra. To test his theory, Kyoshi pushed more chakra into his eyes. As he did, to his great joy, purple and red wisps of light began to swirl out from his vision. Success. His joy quickly turned into panic when he realized that colorful wisps were headed straight for his father. Kyoshi quickly cut off his chakra before the technique could cause damage. The young boy cringed. That had been close. He then tentatively looked down at the ground, wondering what his father would say. Hopefully, he would get permission to do it again. Kyoshi, did you see something? His father asked, sounding wary, but curious. Kyoshi bit his lip and figured he should answer. White, I saw white, he said, hoping his father wasn't mad. He had tried the technique without permission, and it had nearly gotten out of control. You saw light? His father translated. Kyoshi nodded. Stupid baby mouth. The tone of the question then hit the boy as odd. His father sounded truly puzzled. The man wasn't simply asking to see if they had seen the same thing. Weren't the purple and red wisps visible? They almost hit his father in the face. The room was silent for a minute. Then his father spoke. Kyoshi, have you ever tried doing that before? Kyoshi quickly shook his head, seeing the hint of reprimand. He'd never done it outside the bunker. His father sighed in relief, satisfied with the answer, then said a bit hesitantly. Do you want to try doing it again? Kyoshi nodded, smiling. The man scratched his chin. Okay, but be careful. This is something new for me, so I won't be able to help you. Kyoshi nodded again. He knew that his eyes were unique. He was prepared to figure things out. For the next hour, he practiced pushing out purple and red wisps of light from his eyes. They were beautiful, and he wondered at their purpose. If he kept up a steady pressure, one red and one purple wisp would flow out of each eye in long, unending ribbons. If he decreased the pressure slightly, then the wisps would break off but would continue to swirl around. When Kyoshi stopped pushing chakra into his eyes, the wisps would disperse. Kyoshi discovered that he could direct a wisp's movement with his mind. Kyoshi made 2 new wisps and directed one to touch his palm. The ribbon caused a slight tingle but otherwise did nothing. It was translucent and passed straight through his flesh. Curious, Kyoshi directed the same light ribbon to touch his father, and found that the energy also did nothing major. I did cause the man to flinch through, so the boy assumed that the man felt something. His father so far had let him experiment without asking questions. His father didn't track the wisp's movement with his eyes, but the man would shift away slightly when they came close. After a while, Kyoshi's chakra became exhausted, and the boy deactivated his eyes. His father then took him back to the house. Months passed, and Kyoshi spent a lot of that time in frustration. He still couldn't figure out the purpose of his dojutsu. So far he had been able to create and direct up to 40 wisps of light at once, but they didn't do anything. He discovered that red and purple wisps could be made one at a time if he didn't want to make both colors. Directing and enhancing chakra to only the red portion of his eye would result in creating red wisps, and directing and enhancing chakra to only the purple portion of his eye would result in creating purple wisps. His father had brought down a hand mirror so that Kyoshi could see what his eyes were doing. When he made red wisps, the red part of his iris glowed brighter, and when he made purple wisps, that purple part of his iris glowed brighter. His eyes would brightly glow until the wisp broke off, then his eyes would just faintly glow. Kyoshi sighed. Both colors seemed to have the same effect, having the ability to pass through things and only causing a faint tingle when they did so. Kyoshi felt like there had to be something more. If all his dojutsu could do was create dancing light, then it had to be the lamest one in existence. Kyoshi's father started teaching him kenjutsu when he wasn't experimenting with his eyes. This helped ease the frustration. The small boy learned the basic defenses and strikes using a metal rod. His father was a samurai sword master. Kyoshi was only 3 years old, but despite his age and size, his sword skills were getting formidable. He could now slash, block and flip around like an awesome mini acrobat. Kyoshi often imagined he looked like Yoda. Chakra made things so much easier. He could run faster, jump higher, and hit harder than he ever had in his past life. Time passed, and the day came when he finally made a breakthrough on his dojutsu. He had almost given up on it at this point but enjoyed guiding the ribbons of light around in different patterns for entertainment. It was when he was making one of these ribbons do a quick backflip that something unlocked, the speed and motion causing Churka to rush into the wisp. It was like a shield around it had been lifted. Kiyoshi had tried many times in the past to increase a wisp chakra level, but pushing more chakra into his eyes only made a wisp appear or move around faster. It did nothing to the light's density. With this motion, however, the wisp literally sucked energy out of him and became brighter and more solid. It sizzled with sound, and the circling ribbon filled out into a solid glowing disc. The shock of the bright manifestation broke Kiyoshi's concentration, and the technique dispersed. The sound of a scraping chair turned the boy's attention toward his father, and saw that the man was now staring at the place where the technique had been. For months his father had let him practice his dojutsu while the man had read or wrote on scrolls nearby. Up to this point, the man had never given any indication of seeing anything. It seemed like it was different this time. "What was that, Kiyoshi?" the man asked. His father rose from his chair and came over to him. "Do it again." Kiyoshi nodded, twirling one of his wisps in the same backflip motion. Chakra rushed into the wisp and it flared again into a bright twirling disc. It was no fluke. Kiyoshi, his heart could nearly soar. After months of struggling, he had finally managed a breakthrough. The energy disc vibrated strongly in the room, and Kiyoshi could feel a large drain in his chakra. He ended the technique before it made him pass out. His father congratulated him, and Kiyoshi smiled brightly. He wondered at the disc's abilities but would need to gather more energy. Chakra replenished naturally with time. Seeing that his son's chakra reserve was depleted, Kiyoshi's father took him back to the house. The next day Kiyoshi began experimenting again. His father told him that he should wait to practice the technique a bit more before they interacted with the energy. Kiyoshi agreed and spent a week practicing creating and moving the energy discs around. He found that the glowing discs could be created in many different sizes. Shorter wisps of light created smaller discs, and longer wisps of light created larger discs. The length of a wisp equaled the disc's circumference. Smaller discs sucked up a lot less energy than large ones. For most of his experiments, he made small ones. In his experiments, he discovered that red wisps only activated when he flipped them clockwise, and purple wisps only activated when he flipped them counterclockwise. You also had to flip them at a certain speed, or else they wouldn't activate. No wonder it had taken so long. All this technicality was hard to learn with no instruction. It would have been simple otherwise. But that was the price of learning something new. With new determination, Kiyoshi tried many other different patterns and speeds to see if there were any other reactions. So far, no luck. After a week, his father brought down a stick, rock, and a bottle of water to start interacting with the energy. His father had said that the entire bunker was lined with seals that would absorb any churka that hit it, so they didn't need to worry about the room collapsing. It didn't exactly make the boy feel better. What did his father think would happen? His father was the one who was going to test the energy, and it was Kiyoshi's job to listen and do what his father told him. Starting off, his father told him to create a small energy disc. The man hadn't specified what color, so Kiyoshi made a small red one about the size of a quarter. His father reached forward with the stick and touched it. The disc was solid. The stick rested on the thin edge and didn't pass through. The disc also didn't cut, melt, or explode the wood. Curious, his father told him to rotate the disc horizontally. Kiyoshi did so, and his father poured water onto the small flat surface. The water ran off like it was poured on a floating coin. His father then tentatively touched the disc with his finger. When it didn't do anything, he put his entire palm on the disc and pressed down. The disc didn't budge. The man then proceeded to jerk, hang, and then slam the energy with chakra-infused fists. The disc remained where it was, unharmed, floating brightly in the air. Kiyoshi was fascinated. He hadn't felt any strain when his father had done those things. His father looked fascinated too. "Well, this is definitely interesting." His father stared at the red twirling piece of energy for a moment, then broke out of his thoughts. "Okay, I think that's enough for this one. Why don't you make a purple one? Same size." Kiyoshi nodded, cutting off his chakra to the red disc and creating a purple one in its place. His father then proceeded to do the same thing as before, starting out by resting the stick on the edge. The result was very different. Instead of the energy stopping the thick wood, it sliced right through it like a spinning saw blade. His father backed up a step, grinning. "Oh, that's sharp." He said. "I couldn't feel any resistance." Kiyoshi couldn't revel in the joy, however, as he was suddenly plagued with a new awareness. It was like a sliver of something lodged in his soul. Ever since he started creating discs, there had been faint feelings of something happening inside him, but this was a lot more prominent. When his father swiped at the vertical disc horizontally, an even larger chunk of something flared into his awareness. The wood had been cut in half again. Looking at the remaining stick in his father's grip, and then looking around on the floor, he realized that parts that had passed through the small disk of energy were nowhere to be seen. This energy did cut things. It disintegrated them. Or absorbed them. At this last thought, Kiyoshi thought about the two feelings in his soul. Was it possible that he was somehow aware of the things that this energy absorbed? His father tossed a rock at the purple energy disk, and the disk bore a donut hole through it, the center of the rock disappearing. Another piece of matter flared into his consciousness, this time different. Kiyoshi sighed. Should he tell his father about this? He still couldn't talk very well, and he didn't fully know what was going on himself. The new awareness didn't seem to be causing him any pain or ill effects, so Kiyoshi let his father continue with the experiments. The purple disc absorbed anything it touched. Kiyoshi's father had him make a bigger purple disc so that he could stab one of the now shorter sticks into it. They found that the stick got stuck in the energy. You could push it forward, but you couldn't pull it back. This was how they both concluded that the energy absorbed matter. It didn't disintegrate it. If the energy disintegrated things, then the stick would break off. The only way to remove the stick was to stop the technique. This would result in the visible part of the stick being sliced away from the absorbed part. Well, I'm glad that I didn't stick my finger in there, his father said wryly. That's one nasty trap. Kiyoshi nodded in agreement. I trust you are smart enough not to touch this, right? Kiyoshi nodded. The next day, Kiyoshi meditated. The feelings in his soul yesterday were a mystery he was determined to figure out. He knew it had something to do with his dojutsu because the feelings only appeared when his eyes were activated. Luckily, his father didn't question his actions. Kiyoshi simply said that he wanted to think about his eyes and the man had nodded. Meditation was a common thing they both did. He pushed chakra into his eyes while focusing deep inside himself. A new expanse opened up and a bundle of different signatures flared into life. Kiyoshi focused on the signatures and followed them until he entered a large golden realm. Kiyoshi could see things in himself when he concentrated. It was like seeing with actual eyes. The boy didn't know if this was a common thing in this world, but it was amazing. What he saw was an endless expanse of gold. In this golden matter floated hundreds of clear cylinder bubbles. Zooming in, he saw that almost all of the bubbles were empty, but a few had things inside. These were the bubbles with the strong signatures. One bubble had a thin slice of wood, a chunk of rock, and a splash of water inside. One bubble had a 3-inch stick. And another bubble had other things that his purple energy had absorbed. Focusing further, he saw that each bubble had a plain red and purple disc attached to it. A red disc was on one side and a purple disc was on the other, the bubbles looking like cylinder test tubes with a bottom and top lid. There were short cylinders and long cylinders. The circumference of each cylinder also varied. Kiyoshi theorized that a cylinder bubble was made each time he created a disc. Anything that was absorbed by the same disc was in the same bubble. Larger discs made larger bubbles and smaller discs made smaller bubbles. The length of a bubble had to be the length of time a disc was active. Kiyoshi concluded all this since objects in each bubble seemed to be laid out in a timeline. Objects were stretched out or compacted depending on how fast they had entered the realm. What would creating a bubble in real time look like? Was it possible to focus on both disc creation and the golden realm at the same time? Opening his eyes, he kept his mind centered on the spiritual space and created a purple wisp. It worked. In his mind's eye, he could see the golden realm, and with his physical eyes, he could see the outside world. Focusing on the golden realm, he saw that when he made the purple wisp, a plain purple disc formed in the center of the golden realm, just like the plain purple discs on the end of each bubble. Only this one wasn't attached to anything. Curious, Kiyoshi stopped the technique. When the purple wisp in the bunker disappeared, the purple disc in the golden realm did as well. Kiyoshi made a shorter purple wisp. This caused a smaller purple disc to appear in the golden realm. The boy then made a long purple wisp. As the wisp came out of his eyes, another purple circle started to appear next to the first one, getting larger and larger. When Kiyoshi broke off the wisp from his eyes to flow around the room, the circle stopped growing. It seemed like longer wisps made larger discs, just like they did in the physical realm. The only difference was that he didn't have to twirl the wisp to make it. Kiyoshi wondered what would happen if he did twirl the wisp in the physical realm. When he did, the corresponding purple disc in the golden realm lit up with energy. 2 plain red discs were then pushed out of the glowing purple disc, one coming out the back and one coming out the front. Behind these 2 red discs, 2 bubbles then began to expand out in a mirror image. Kiyoshi dispelled the energy disc in the bunker, and in response, the purple energy disc in the golden realm stopped glowing and it split apart, the 2 mirror bubbles separating from each other. The result was 2 brand new cylinder bubbles, each with a purple and red lid. Apparently, an energy disc made 2 bubbles, not one. It made sense seeing that his discs had 2 sides. Kiyoshi decided to see what would happen when he made a red energy disc. Pushing a red wisp out of his eyes, a red disc started to form in the golden realm. Kiyoshi released the wisp and then twirled it into swirling energy. The red disc in the golden realm flared with light in response, but nothing else happened. Kiyoshi pondered upon it. If the red disc was in the golden realm, then it had to have a purpose. An idea struck him. What if red discs did the reverse of purple discs? They rotated in opposite directions. If purple discs sucked things into this realm, then maybe the red discs pushed things out. Kiyoshi's heart leaped at the possibility. Focusing, he moved one of the bubbles toward the glowing red disc in the center, turning it so that the red lid of the tube touched the glowing disc. Nothing happened. Puzzled, Kiyoshi turned the bubble around and touched the purple side to the red glowing disc. Still, nothing happened. Maybe the 2 discs touching needed to be the same size? Right now the red lid on the bubble overlapped the glowing red disc slightly. Kiyoshi looked around and found a bubble that had a slightly smaller circumference. He brought that bubble up to the glowing red disc and touched the red lid to the red glowing disc. This time the red lid was smaller than the glowing disc. This also caused nothing to happen. Just to make sure, Kiyoshi flipped the bubble around and touched the smaller purple disc to the larger red glowing disc. The result was the same. By this time, Kiyoshi was out of chakra and he had to stop for the day. The next morning, the boy continued with the experiment. It took a frustrating amount of time to find a perfect match for the glowing disc he had created, but he finally managed it. Touching the perfectly sized red lid to the red glowing disc, the results were rewarding. The red lid sunk into the glowing red disc. The bubble then followed like a vacuum tube in a bank slot, sinking in until the purple lid on its other side disappeared. The bubble was gone. It had worked. The next day Kiyoshi started to practice creating energy discs that matched the bubble's lid size. He found that if he focused, bubbles would shimmer once a wisp reached the length that would match them. Kiyoshi got rid of a few empty bubble tubes as practice before trying to get rid of a bubble that held objects. The first object bubble that he tried to get rid of was the bubble that held a small slice of wood, a chunk of rock, and a splash of water. These were the very first objects that were placed in his soul. The boy took a deep breath and connected the quarter-size red lid to a quarter-size red glowing disc. The bubble started to sink into the red energy. When the part that held the small slice of wood disappeared from the golden realm, the piece of wood appeared out of the red portal in the bunker. It was like the small thin piece had never been absorbed. I came out of the bottom edge of the red disc and fell down to the ground. Not long after, the chunk of wood came out, followed by the piece of rock, and then the splash of water, all traveling out horizontally away from Kiyoshi before gravity took over, falling to the ground. The objects came out exactly how they had been put in, the time between the objects being the same, the speed, as well as the part of the disc they came out from. For the next month, Kiyoshi and his father experimented. The energy discs were portals. It was obvious now. Purple discs were entrance portals, and red discs were exit portals. One thing they also discovered was that the portals had zero effect on Kiyoshi. When Kiyoshi tried to touch a red portal, it had passed right through him. After debating about it for a while, Kiyoshi's father tentatively allowed him to touch a purple portal as well. The result was the same. After more experimenting, they realized that portals didn't affect things that held Kiyoshi's DNA. Sticking his hand through a purple portal, Kiyoshi's arm would appear unclothed on the other side, his sleeve stuck in the portal. Dirt and any other things Kiyoshi held would also disappear, but his hand and arm would be fine. This included hair and fingernails. The portal, however, did affect Kiyoshi's chakra. A red portal would push chakra out of the boy's channels, and a purple portal would absorb it. After Kiyoshi's father realized this, he made Kiyoshi promise to never go fully into a portal. This would kill him. A person always needed a little bit of chakra to survive. Kiyoshi nodded, swallowing, thankful that his father was with him. If he had been experimenting alone, he might have done just that. Deciding to be much more cautious from now on, he continued experimenting. The portals had many uses. To start, a red portal could be used as either a shield or a lifting device. The red energy didn't seem to be affected by gravity or any outside force, and Kiyoshi could move it around in the air with this mind. As long as Kiyoshi wore shoes, he could stand and float around on a red portal. He could also lift heavy things or block powerful attacks. That wasn't all. Kiyoshi realized that a red portal could also be used offensively. Anything that was thrown into a purple portal could later appear out of a red portal of the same size. This meant that if he threw a knife or acid into a purple portal, a red portal could send the thing out as an attack. The purple portal in turn could be used to trap or store things. It could also act as a tunnel creator or a saw blade. The Dojutsu portals had two downsides though. The first is that the Golden Realm had a limit to what it could hold. The golden space was large, but it wasn't endless. If he zoomed out, he could see that it had an edge. This meant that he had to keep up the practice of constantly removing bubbles that he didn't want or need. It was tedious. The other downside was the amount of chakra the portals consumed. His father said that the portals were a high-level technique and that they should be used sparingly, especially until he got older and his chakra level increased. To be more balanced, it was good for him to learn other techniques that required less energy. Kiyoshi agreed and started focusing solely on learning kenjutsu. His father also began to teach him taijutsu and other things. The training continued at a steady, constant pace. Kiyoshi enjoyed the feeling of becoming stronger, faster, and more skilled with each passing day. His life was peaceful and simple. A year later, everything changed. Kiyoshi was 5 years old when it happened. The night was cool and there was a full moon shining brightly in the sky. His father had needed to do some farm work earlier that day, so their training session had been held in the evening. After 3 hours of sword training, Kiyoshi was exhausted. He was excited to get back to the house. His sweat was cooled by the soft wind, as he walked down the dirt path with his father towards the soft, glowing light of the kitchen. He could already imagine the delicious food waiting there. Crickets chirped in the dark green grass, and the wind rustled the leaves of the trees surrounding their little farm. It was a peaceful night. Kiyoshi's thoughts were altered when his father suddenly froze in the pathway. Kiyoshi stopped walking as well, becoming concerned. "What's wrong?" Kiyoshi whispered, and stretched out his senses. Focusing, he was surprised to pick up 2 signatures inside the house. They were different from anything he'd ever felt before. They felt human and were currently near his mother. A shadow passed by the light in the window. "Kiyoshi, go back to the barn." his father said softly, urgently. Stay there and don't come out until I get you. Kiyoshi nodded and walked quickly back the way they had come. He took one last look at the house, before going inside the barn. What was going on? Who were those people? Kiyoshi set his lantern down on the straw-covered floor in the corner, and paced back and forth in front of it. This was the first time anyone had visited. Were the people in the house dangerous? His father had always been an example of strength and knowledge. Seeing him react in such a way caused a lot of concern. A flare of chakra suddenly hit his senses. Kiyoshi tensed and looked around. The room was silent. The cow and donkey were out in the field, and the chickens were fast asleep. There was nothing but the sound of the whistling wind. He didn't feel a foreign presence, but the chakra flare had been close. Kiyoshi looked nervously around the room. The sound of crunching straw made him whirl in the sound's direction. The boy picked up the lantern and held it out in front of his body, trying to see into the dark corner. The crunch had only happened once, but Kiyoshi knew his ears hadn't imagined it. It had sounded like someone's foot. Silence continued as Kiyoshi scanned the shadows. A voice suddenly hummed. The tone was deep and dark. Kiyoshi flinched. The voice had come from the dark corner he was trying to illuminate. Who are you? He squeaked, trying not to bolt. Living so long alone with his parents made the foreign voice even more fighting than under normal circumstances. A tall dark form moved from the wall in response, coming closer and stepping into the light. The form appeared to be a human, clothed in a long black cloak with a deep hood. The hood was deep to the point that Kiyoshi could only see the bottom of the person's chin. Below the chin, around the person's throat, was a red piece of cloth with a rectangular metal plate attached to it. The man walked up until he was standing right in front of the boy, peering down at him. He then placed a palm on the boy's forehead, and Kiyoshi felt a shimmer of energy. The man was silent for a moment, then took a step back. Who are you? The man asked back, soft and accusing. Kiyoshi looked around the barn to see if there was any sign of his father. This was not good. He did not like the feeling of this man. Actually, the lack of feeling was what disturbed him. It was like standing in front of a void. The tone of the man's voice also indicated that the man was not happy with him. Who are your parents? The man continued when he didn't receive an answer. The voice was harsh, and Kiyoshi swallowed. I am not supposed to talk to strangers, he stumbled out lamely, not realizing until now how frightened he was. Technically, his parents had never told him this, but it seemed like a good thing to say to get the man to leave. Please leave. The man was silent for a moment. Then, as if coming to a decision, he suddenly reached forward and grabbed the boy's collar. Kiyoshi inhaled and held his breath as he was then dragged roughly out of the barn. As they traveled through the moonlight, Kiyoshi wondered if he should retaliate. There were several different strikes he could make in this position. Could he beat the stranger? Not likely. This man seemed graceful and strong, and the lack of the man's aura told Kiyoshi that he wasn't normal. Animals and even plants had auras. Every living thing could be felt in some way. Was this man a zombie? Through his thoughts, Kiyoshi didn't realize that the man was taking him to the house until the man opened the door and shoved him inside. The conversation taking place in the living room came to a halt. Shinobu, what is the meaning of this? One of the strangers in the house asked. The man had large muscles and wore a red sleeveless tunic with a brown leather vest. Like the cloaked man, he wore a red piece of cloth with a rectangular metal plate attached to it. His, however, was tied around his head. His partner, in turn, was a strong, leaner man with spiky red hair. He also wore a red headband with a metal plate. Kiyoshi swallowed. I found this boy in the barn outside, the cloaked man said flatly in answer. These people seemed to be hiding him. Kiyoshi glanced at his parents across the room who were staring at the situation in shock and horror. The muscled man furrowed his brow in confusion, before looking down to study the small boy. His eyes widened when he noticed the red and purple rings in the boy's eyes. Is that a dojutsu? He asked in slight disbelief. Yes. The zombie man again answered flatly. The boy is also C rank. This caused the muscled man to whip back and study the boy again as if he had missed something. Impossible. Only a prodigy could be one at his age. You know my abilities, the cloaked man said darkly. I scanned his system. His chakra levels and system are like one of a graduated ninja. I'm sure of it. The muscled man turned and glared at Kiyoshi's father. Who is he? He growled. Kiyoshi's father glared back fiercely. His eyes held a threat that Kiyoshi had never seen before. The boy is none of your concern, he said lowly. Leave now and there won't be a problem. The muscled man's eyes narrowed at the disrespect. His indignation quickly turned wary as he met the farmer's dark, unflinching gaze. You guys are ninja, aren't you? The man stated as if just realizing it. That boy is your son. You've been training him. He then turned to the cloaked man. Shinobu, scan them, he snapped. See their rank. The cloaked man in response left Kiyoshi and headed over to the pair of farmers. Kiyoshi's father clenched his fists and glared at the approaching man, the threat in the farmer's gaze causing the other to stop. We are not your enemies here. We are peaceful farmers. All we wish is to be left alone. The muscled man shook his head. Being an unregistered ninja is illegal in rock country. Hiding a bloodline is even worse. The Tsuchikage will not be pleased. You are under arrest. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed until our Lord can decide what to do with you. Kiyoshi swallowed again. This couldn't be happening. His parents were going to get arrested? His mother and father didn't look too pleased with the fact either. Their eyes turned to one another, and a silent message was passed. Before Kiyoshi could register what happened, chakra flared. He was outside of the house. Harsh wind pushed at the back of his head, forcing it against a warm person's chest. He was being carried by someone, and they were moving fast. Strong chakra vibrated out of the person, filling in his senses. Distant flashes of chakra were also felt in the distance, towards the place they had been. Those signatures quickly became fainter and fainter. Kiyoshi recognized the person carrying him as his father. The man was holding him tight, rushing through the forest at astonishing speed. After about a minute of running, his father slowed down to a more visible pace, the trees becoming individual again, passing by like blinking stripes. His father changed direction many times, taking sharp turns to the left and right, and sometimes cutting off his chakra and backtracking. After hours of running in various ways and directions, the man finally stopped, his breathing slightly labored. By this time, Kiyoshi was in a daze, and he felt like he could be sick. Okay, I think we can rest here for a minute, his father said, setting Kiyoshi down on a rock. I'm sorry this happened. You must have questions. Kiyoshi blinked. He had figured out the base of the situation. He did have one question though. Where's Mom? His father looked grim. We split up, he answered. She can't run as fast as I can, so she went another way. I think she will be okay though. The ninjas want you more than her. Kiyoshi looked down wearily. This was all his fault. At the boy's downcast expression, his father sighed. I should have told you a long time ago, but I didn't want to worry you. You're special, Kiyoshi. Your eyes are special. They aren't like most in the world. If a person sees them, they will know that you are different. People will think you are dangerous. His father smiled grimly at this. And they're right. You are dangerous. You have an amazing gift. Because of this, bad people will try to use you for their own purposes. I can't let that happen. Kiyoshi nodded solemnly. His father smiled softly then, putting a hand on Kiyoshi's shoulder. It's going to be okay. Your mother and I have a place where we can meet. After that, we can find another home. Then we can. His father trailed off. Kiyoshi felt it too. There was a thrum of chakra in the distance. It was quickly getting closer and stronger. 3 auras were soon felt. One was the aura of the muscled man, the other 2 foreign and new. Impossible, his father breathed out, quickly picking Kiyoshi up and speeding away. Somehow the muscled ninja had tracked them, and he had company. Had the man called back up? Someone besides the cloaked man and spiky red-haired man? This was bad. If there were more than 3 enemies, then they were all in trouble. Both his father and his mother would be outnumbered. The ninjas following them also seemed to have strong tracking ability. No matter how fast his father ran or tried to deceive, they couldn't hide. They had already traveled so long and far. How much chakra did his father have left? Would this come to a test of endurance? After 3 more hours of running, his father seemed to decide that it was hopeless. It was best to surrender or fight. As they traveled through a canyon of trees and tall rocks, Kiyoshi's father stopped at a mountainous rock and quickly hopped up its various ledges to the top. He set Kiyoshi down on a ledge near the peak. Stay up here and stay out of sight, he said. Don't come down. Kiyoshi nodded, his heart thumping with worry. His father looked resigned. Did this mean his dad was going to cut a deal? Worse, was his father was going to fight? His father's chakra levels couldn't be that high after running for so long. He was outnumbered too. Kiyoshi was willing to go with the ninjas if it meant his father would be okay. Lowering himself close to the ground, Kiyoshi peered slowly over the rock's ledge, only going as far out as necessary. His father had told him to stay out of sight, but he had to see. Kiyoshi was cast in shadow, so that gave him some comfort. The full moon to his back brightly illuminated the canyon floor below. His father was currently standing out in the center of the flat open space, watching as 2 large shapes in the distance approached. It was the shapes of 2 men riding on top of 2 giant lizards. They were traveling quickly but slowed to a stop when they came within a few yards of Kiyoshi's father. So the foreign auras had been lizards. Are those the things that track them? So you have finally decided to stop running, the muscled man said from on top of the beast, his voice distant, but clear to Kiyoshi's ears. The muscled man dismounted his lizard, and the zombie man to the side did the same. Do you have any more need of us, boss? One of the lizards asked, voice deep and gravely. The muscled man waved dismissively. No, you may go. I will summon you again if I need you. The 2 lizards nodded and then poofed into smoke, leaving the 2 ninjas facing their opponent alone. Where is the boy? The muscled man asked. Silence filled the empty plain. He's up on the ridge, the cloaked man replied after a moment, and Kiyoshi's father tensed. Apparently, the question hadn't been for him. The muscled man smiled at this, relaxing, and then studied Kiyoshi's father. You know you're one fast bastard, he said conversationally. You got a bit of endurance on you too. That Tsuchikage might find a use for you. Surrender, and we may show mercy. I won't let you take my son. Kiyoshi's father replied resolutely. He doesn't belong to you. Everything here belongs to the Tsuchikage. The man snapped, causing Kyoshi's father to flinch. This is his land. You'll do well to remember that. A tense silence filled the air for a moment after the outburst. Apparently, the man was angrier than he first let on. The muscled man then calmed a bit. I am sick of playing this game. Surrender or die. This is your last chance. In response, Kyoshi's father formed a long sword out of pure energy. It glowed brightly in the dark night. The two ninjas tensed and also flared with techniques. What followed was a series of attacks that were too fast for Kyoshi's eyes to follow. Blurs, flashes, and explosions set the night ablaze. It was frightening. So frightening that his heart seized. How could Kyoshi ever compete with such power? The boy had thought he was skilled, but he was wrong. This was an entirely different level. The earth shook with a shock wave when the muscled man appeared out of a blur and slammed a palm down. The ledge that Kyoshi was on cracked off due to the force and Kyoshi slipped. The earth still shaking and rocks falling, Kyoshi tried to find a grip as he slid down the steep rocky slope. A broken tree branch growing out of a crevice slashed deeply across his side, and he cried out in pain. Kyoshi then focused and strengthened his body with chakra, finally managing to find a grip, hanging on off a lip of the rock. The field had gone silent. Turning his head to see what was going on, Kyoshi froze in horror. All three figures were now still, and the cloaked ninja had a hand thrust through Kyoshi's father's chest. The cloaked man then vibrated differently and Kyoshi's father fell down through the spearing arm like it was made of air. The shock of what occurred made Kyoshi lose focus again, causing him to fall the rest of the way down to the ground. The impact knocked the air out of his lungs. Rising shakily off the ground, he quickly hobbled over to a pile of boulders and hid behind them, hoping that they would provide some cover. Peering through them, he saw that his father was now lying still on the ground. The muscled ninja walked up and towered over the prone man. Kyoshi could hear him talking lowly to his father, but couldn't make out the words. The muscled ninja then pulled out a knife. Kyoshi's eyes widened at the gleaming blade. No! The ninja was going to finish his father off. That couldn't happen. The boy flared chakra into his eyes and sent out two purple wisps. The action made the two standing men glance at him, but Kyoshi didn't stop, sending the wisps straight into their chests. The muscled ninja immediately flared his chakra, the technique dispelling the wisp. The cloaked ninja in turn immediately changed his vibration to the energy Kyoshi had felt before when his arm had passed through his father. Seeing that the purple wisp was still inside the cloaked man, however, Kyoshi immediately spun it into a portal. A CD-sized disc flared to life in the darkness, and Kyoshi moved it up through the man's chest and out his throat. The man jerked and his chakra vibration returned to normal. When it did, blood exploded in every direction. The muscled ninja, caught off guard by the gore, was suddenly blasted by a dense bolt of lightning from behind. It slammed the man into the canyon rock face. The bolt of lightning had come from Kyoshi's father. Not wasting any time, Kyoshi made another CD-sized purple portal and sawed the stunned man in half. Silence filled the air. Kyoshi's hands were shaking with adrenaline and fear. Stumbling over to the center of the field, Kyoshi stopped when he saw the gore he had created. Blood, bone, and body tissue were all around him. The cloaked ninja was in tatters. It looked like a wild animal had ripped him apart and gobbled up his insides. It was monstrous, and it had been instinct. What did that say about Kyoshi? Kyoshi looked over at the muscled ninja. He was lying in a wide pool of blood, looking like a cut burrito, intestines and organs spilling from his split core. Kyoshi almost vomited. His mind was snapped out of it when he heard his father croak weakly. Rushing to the man's side, he knelt down. Dad. Dad, are you okay? Kyoshi asked, eyes tearing up. He knew it was a stupid question. Blood had soaked into his pant legs as he had knelt. His father's entire chest was covered with blood. Kyoshi searched for the wound so he could apply pressure. To his horror, his tiny hand sunk completely down into his father's chest cavity. Dad, tell me what to do. Please tell me what to do. He cried in panic. There had to be some way to stop this, a technique that could reverse or help heal the damage. His father slowly reached up and grasped his tiny hand in answer, squeezing it gently. I'm sorry, he whispered weakly, eyes staring up at the sky and distant. I'm sorry, Kyoshi sobbed. His father's aura flickered. Sorry? He was the one who should be sorry. If he had just hidden in the barn better or helped out sooner, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I love you, his father said, voice fading. His aura faded as well. Kyoshi wailed when it was gone. He bent over and cried brokenly into the shoulder of the dead man, the fabric and flesh beneath muffling his sobs. His father had been one of the only people that he had known in this world. He was kind, brave, and strong. How would he live without him? Was his mother even alive? If she was dead, then Kyoshi was truly alone. There was no sign of the spiky red-haired ninja. Kyoshi assumed that that man had gone after his mother. Even if she was alive, how would he ever find her? Kyoshi lay there by his father till morning. When pink light filled the sky above, Kyoshi stared blankly at it in a funeral pose. His tears had long since dried, but his eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't been able to sleep a wink. His side ached where he had been slashed by the branch. The slash had soaked his shirt with blood, but it had finally stopped due to him keeping firm pressure on it through the night. Kiyoshi was afraid that if he moved, the wound would open again. His body was also littered with bruises. Kiyoshi knew though that if he didn't get up, he would probably die here. He turned on his stomach and slowly rose to his feet. He needed bandages. This would help keep pressure on his side if the wound opened. The ninja didn't have any supplies, so he resorted to cutting off strips of the ninja's clothing and knotting them together. He didn't have the heart to cut anything off his father. After wrapping his torso with the haphazard cloth, Kiyoshi then made a red portal with his eyes. His throat was dry with thirst, and he had water in his golden realm. Looking through all his bubbles, Kiyoshi now deeply regretted not putting more things in them. Simple food, clothes, or medical supplies would be a lifesaver right now. What had he been thinking? The water was only there because of his experiments. Bringing the red portal above his mouth, Kiyoshi tilted his head back and quenched his thirst. Glancing around afterward, Kiyoshi tried to think what to do next. He was lost, he didn't have food, and he was injured. It was also possible that there were other ninjas around. He had just killed 2 of their comrades, which most likely labeled him as a criminal in this country. He needed to get out of here. There was also his father to think about. He couldn't just leave him here to rot in the sun. Kiyoshi also didn't want to keep him in his golden realm. Seeing the dead body right now was bad enough. Kiyoshi would need to bury him. Here was as good as a place as ever, as it was the place he had died. Perhaps someday he could come back and visit. Kiyoshi twirled a purple wisp around his father and formed a large purple portal under him. Gravity caused the man to sink into it. Kiyoshi then made another purple portal the same size and tunneled it into the ground. A red portal was then made which dropped his father from it into the cylinder hole. Then Kiyoshi made another red portal which dropped the dirt he had just tunneled out back into the space. The whole process took less than a minute. It left him exhausted, but a lot less than if he had done all of that physically. Kiyoshi then started to make his way out of the canyon. Days passed, and during that time, Kiyoshi traveled with a mixture of fear and worry. He knew he had to find a place with food and shelter. It either had to come from nature or civilization. What were his chances? The type of people in this place was unknown. They might not be willing to help him. And surviving in nature was becoming slimmer and slimmer by the day. The wound across his side was infected. It had started as a dull throbbing, but it now oozed with pain. Kiyoshi believed he had developed sepsis. He felt weak and fevered. Time was not his friend. His wound was getting worse, not better. The skin refused to heal over, too full of infection to do so. If this continued, the sepsis could develop flesh-eating bacteria. His stomach also ached with hunger. He'd eaten some leaves and a few roots, but most things he couldn't identify. He didn't want to poison himself. Another day passed, and at this point, Kiyoshi didn't care anymore. If a ninja found and killed him, that was fine. At least it would stop the pain. Kiyoshi doubted that would happen though. He had walked more than 100 miles and he still hadn't come across any human life. Kiyoshi didn't know if this was just chance, or if this place was really that deserted, but he was beginning to suspect he would die alone. The boy couldn't take another step. The only thing that had kept him going up to this point was his chakra. When his physical muscles couldn't take it, he had flared chakra into them to keep them going. His chakra reserve was almost gone now though, and Kiyoshi doubted it would ever replenish. His ability to build chakra had decreased with his body's physical state. The two were connected. He would die before he got the chakra or physical strength to continue. Kiyoshi laid down by a tree root as the forest sounds faded and became distant. Sinking into oblivion, the boy failed to notice a small unique chakra signal, flickering softly above him in the trees. Hero Abiram sat listlessly by the fire, irritated. His team had been stationed at the borders of the Fire Nation for almost 3 months now, and he beginning to get annoyed. Nothing of note had happened. The enemies of Konoha had stayed their hand and he was ready to go home. The Abiram would have enjoyed the peace and quiet if it wasn't for his 2 companions. They constantly ruined it with their obnoxious sounds. "Come on, Sarah, give it back!" His teammate Kishihyuga yelled, grabbing at the book he had been reading. "Gotta catch me first," the chirpy female answered, waving the reading material in front of the boy's face. Sarah was a woman of action. She couldn't sit still. In long, uneventful missions, she almost became unbearable. The Hyuga wasn't bad, but his reactions to Sarah encouraged the girl. Hiro sighed, leaning his head against a tree. It was at times like this that he wished for conflict. His eyes snapped open when one of his beetles flew into the clearing. He always had a few dozen out to scout. It was one of the reasons his team was always got stuck with border patrols. His bugs had the ability to observe and relate the things they saw to him through mental communication. If one had returned, it meant it had something to report. His companions also saw the bug and quieted. Sarah had the expression that wished desperately for bad news. The bug landed on his finger. After a few moments, Hiro nodded to it, and the bug disappeared into his sleeve. "Well, what is it?" Sarah demanded impatiently, hating when he did this. Hiro didn't tell her things unless it was necessary. "I need to inform Shoma," Hiro said in answer, ignoring the girl. He got up and walked over to the side of the clearing. Shoma was their Jonin captain. He was currently sleeping in a tent after the night patrol. Walking over the tent opening, Hiro flared his chakra to wake the man. "What is it?" the man asked from inside. Hiro hadn't flared the signal for immediate action, so the man slowly sat up and rubbed his eyes. "One of my bugs has spotted a life form about 5 miles out," Hiro stated emotionlessly. "It is a human child, young and badly injured. He appears to be alone." Shoma immediately became more focused. Hiro knew Shoma had a small child own, so it didn't surprise him that the man was concerned. "What are the child's injuries?" Hiro was silent a moment, as he asked his bug the question. "My bug said he saw blood around the torso and on many other parts of the child's clothes," he replied. "The child also seemed to be ill with fever and has fallen into an unnatural sleep." Shoma nodded, getting to his feet. "Send your bugs to scout the surrounding area near the area. The place the child was injured should be close. We need to find out what caused the injuries, and if there are any other people in need of help." Hiro dipped his head in answer. "Let's move out," the captain said. Sarah and Kishi had followed Hiro to the tent, so they had heard everything. Hopping through the trees with Chunin speed, the 4 ninjas quickly came to the place Hiro's bug described. Jumping down next to the small child, Shoma felt for a pulse. "It's weak, but he's still alive," he stated. The child looked male, and had olive skin and black shaggy hair. The black hair had 2 purple highlights in it, which was curious. Wrapped around his torso was a sloppy display of mixed fabrics knotted together. They stunk with infection. Hiro realized that whatever had happened to the boy, it hadn't happened recently. Infection as bad as this took at least a week to settle. He also noted that the fabrics of the makeshift bandages did not match any of the boy's clothes. Shoma seemed to notice the detail as well. The boy must have been with someone at some point. That person is likely dead or gravely injured. His guardian must have patched him up before dying or telling the boy to leave. We need to search any surrounding cliffs. The injuries seem to have come from a fall. The pattern of the bruises clearly indicates that. Hiro and Kishi, I want you to go find his guardian. Sarah and I will take the boy to the regional base for medical treatment. Meet us there when you're done." Hiro and Kishi nodded. Shoma picked the small boy up in his arms and he and Sarah headed off. They traveled at great speed towards the regional base, trees blurring past them. The boy was in a bad state. Shoma was surprised he was even alive. What was he doing here so far on the outskirts of Fire Country? Most civilians stayed away from the nation's border. It was where most of the conflict and fighting happened. Shoma hoped they would reach help in time. The boy was completely unresponsive. 30 minutes later, the fort's walls came into view. The ninjas guarding the gates let him and Sarah pass when they saw their headbands. They quickly traveled through the settlement to the medical building and Shoma handed the boy to one of the medical ninjas inside. He didn't know anything about the boy, so after writing the boy's description and where and how he was found, Shoma left the medical team to take care of the rest. Going outside, Shoma then sat under a tree by the medical center to wait for the rest of his team while Sarah roamed the base. The border had been silent for the most part, so there was no major hurry to get back to their post. Hopefully, the 2 boys would arrive soon with the boy's guardian. An hour later, one of the medical ninjas came out to meet him. "Sir, in your file you said that the boy has a possible guardian, one that your team is currently looking for, correct?" The woman in the white coat asked. "Yes, that is correct," the man said, puzzled. Why was the healer asking this? Had the boy died? The woman frowned. "Sir, we have reason to believe that the boy's parents could possibly be foreign ninjas. They could be hostile. Is there a way to contact your team so that they are aware of this?" "What?" Shoma said, now alert with concern. "How do you know this?" The woman looked troubled as well. "The boy has been trained to use chakra," she replied. "His chakra system is that of a prodigy. There is no way he is a simple civilian. He also has a Dojutsu. It's not the Sharingan, and it's not the Byakugan. Honestly, I don't know what it is. It looks nothing like any clan any of us has ever heard of or seen. We are writing a message to the Hokage as we speak and have set up extra security around the boy. This discovery puts the base in great danger." Shoma was shocked. A Dojutsu, those were extremely rare. People would be willing to fight and kill for it. "Is the boy going to survive?" he asked. The medical ninja nodded. "Yes, we believe so. It was a close call though." Shoma nodded, wondering what this could mean for Konoha. He decided to grab Sarah and go find the rest of his team, leaving a note at the medical center just in case they missed each other. The situation was too dangerous for them to face alone. When Koshi woke up, he believed he had died for yet a second time. His eyes squinted at the white light above, bright and all-encompassing. As things came into focus, however, he realized that it was only the effect of bright sunlight hitting off a white-tiled ceiling, not a heavenly realm. Then where was he? Seeing the 4 stand to the side, he thought for a moment that he was back in his old world. The 4 stand looked modern. Had the past 5 years been nothing but a dream? Raising his hands in front of his eyes, he realized that this wasn't the case. He was still in his 5-year-old body. Kiyoshi didn't know if he was relieved or disappointed. He missed his wife and family. It would be nice to see them again, especially after recent events. But he wasn't sure if he was ready to let this world go. He had loved new people and done new things. It would hurt to find that it was all an illusion. Kiyoshi was lying flat on his back with a thin white blanket draped over him. He decided to try to get up. Rolling over, he was surprised by how little pain he felt. The constant throbbing and deep aches were gone. It was blissful. He was still weak though, and his arms wouldn't lift him from his face-plant position. The simple roll had taken all his energy. He couldn't even lift his head off the bed. A door opened and he heard footsteps approaching. Someone gently grabbed his shoulders and flipped him on his back again. Blinking dazedly at the person, Kiyoshi saw that the person handling him was a pretty woman with a blonde ponytail. She was wearing a white coat and had a kind smile. "Don't try to move too much. You are still very weak," the woman said. Kiyoshi blinked at her, still disoriented. "My name is Kimi," she continued. "I'm here to help you. I'm going to move your bed up so you can look around, okay?" Seeing that Kiyoshi didn't protest the statement, she proceeded to crank the head of the medical bed up to a 45-degree angle. "Are you thirsty?" the woman asked, picking up a clear glass of water from the floor stand and holding it out in front of him. Kiyoshi's looked at the glass and nodded. His throat felt dry. The woman brought the glass to his lips and tilted it up. After the boy had swallowed a few gulps, the woman put it down. "Can you tell me your name?" Kiyoshi was wary but figured it wasn't an unreasonable request. "Kiyoshi," he softly said. The woman smiled. "That's a nice name. Do you have a family name?" Kiyoshi furrowed his brow as he realized he didn't. At least he didn't know if he did. It never seemed an important thing to ask. His parents had never told him. He shook his head in answer. The woman frowned. "Do you remember how you got hurt?" Kiyoshi nodded. "How did you get hurt?" she asked. Kiyoshi wondered how much information to give. He didn't know this woman. She seemed kind, but the situation and the person's intentions were unclear. "I fell down some rocks," he stated simply. "Were you alone when this happened?" the woman asked. Kiyoshi swallowed. "My dad was there but he died." "Do you have a mother or another guardian?" Kiyoshi looked down and nodded. "I have a mom but I don't know where she is. Or if she is still alive," he added mentally. The woman nodded. "Was she also with you when you got hurt?" Kiyoshi shook his head. "How old are you?" "5, Kiyoshi softly said. "Where do you live?" Kiyoshi shrugged. "Do you know what country you grew up in?" At this, Kiyoshi tensed. Rock country, he had only found that out recently. The name made him shudder. "Do you think your mom is looking for you?" Koshi gave a hopeless expression. "She will if she can. But my father and I were really far away when the rockfall happened. I don't think she will know where to look." The woman nodded solemnly. "Did your father die from the rockfall?" the woman asked gently. Koshi hesitated but shook his head honestly. "How did he die?" the woman asked. Kiyoshi swallowed. This was what he had wanted to avoid. Reliving the memory was hard, and telling the truth could instantly make him a criminal. Ninjas seemed to be people with power and authority. Fighting against and killing two of them could be a death sentence. The woman didn't seem hostile, but that could quickly change. "Where am I?" he decided to ask instead. If this was rock country, then he would need to stay quiet. The woman nodded, taking the diversion in stride. "You are in a military base at the borders of Fire Country," she said. "A ninja found you in the forest and brought you here." "Fire Country?" Kiyoshi sighed in relief. So he had traveled far enough. The woman studied him intently, curious at his relief. Kiyoshi became guarded again. Thankfully, the lady seemed to sense his distrust and rose from her seat. "Okay, I think that's enough for now. You just rest. I will be back to tend you soon." Kiyoshi lay there on the bed for the rest of the day. The woman would come in every few hours to reposition him, give him water, or help him use the bathroom. The woman said that they could extract infection and close wounds, but that it was better for his physical fatigue to heal on its own. Kiyoshi had nodded and didn't complain. He was grateful for the help he was getting. He had been washed, clothed, and given medical treatment that was simply astounding. The healing process hadn't even left a scar. His cut and bruises were gone. It was like nothing had ever happened. The medical team must be ninjas. It was likely that everyone at the military base was a ninja. Chakra flashed around outside in varying ways. What would they do with him? The woman hadn't asked any more questions, but he knew she had noticed the colored rings in his eyes. She stared at them intently at times. There were also 2 guards stationed by the door and 1 aura on the roof right above his room window. This couldn't be normal. They obviously saw him as a threat or someone in need of protection. A few days later, Kiyoshi got his answer. Kiyoshi was currently lying on the bed in the room, coloring on some paper with crayons. The woman had given him the supplies that morning, and he made many works of art to sate his boredom. His strength had returned enough to walk, but the woman insisted that he stay where he was unless necessary. His body was not at full capacity. Kiyoshi looked up from his drawing when someone else walked in with the woman. This was new. Up until now, the woman had been the only one to interact with him. It was a middle-aged man. He had messy black hair much like his own and wore a green flak jacket. On his forehead, he wore a black headband with a metal plate. "Kiyoshi," the woman said, "this is Akio. He is going to take you to our military capital. Konoha is a nice place and the Hokage, our leader there, is going to find a place for you to live." Kiyoshi blinked but nodded. "It's a long journey. Is it alright if I carry you?" the man asked. Kiyoshi nodded again. The man came over and picked him up, supporting him on his hip with one of his arms. The man then walked through the medical center and out the door, stepping out into the sunlight. 3 other ninjas were waiting out by a tree. This is my team, the black-haired man said, nodding to the figures. They will be traveling with us. The man's teammates studied him, and Kiyoshi studied them in return. They were all ninjas. That was obvious from their headbands. They were also male and wore green flak jackets. The party turned and headed out of the settlement. The man holding Kiyoshi followed. Once they were past the gates, they picked up speed and raced through the trees. It took 2 days to reach Konoha. During that time, the ninja team stayed mostly quiet. The black-haired man would ask Kiyoshi a few basic questions like if he was thirsty, hungry, or comfortable, but other than that, everyone kept to themselves. Coming up over the ridge to the village, Kiyoshi stared at it in wonder. Konoha was beautiful. It was a large expanse of bright-colored buildings which rested in patches of green trees. There were small patches of trees and large patches of trees. There were also wide open green fields. All of it rested inside a giant circle. The front half of the village was lower than the back half. This made a giant crescent cliff curve through the center of the village. At the center of this cliff face were carved 4 giant faces. Kiyoshi sighed in resignation. There was no doubt about it now. This was truly Konoha from the Japanese TV show. Everything up to this point kept adding to this fact, but seeing Hokage Mountain seemed to confirm it in the boy's mind. Somehow fiction had become reality. Reaching the gate, the guards let them past. Being carried through the village, Kiyoshi saw that there were a number of buildings under construction. Most were almost finished, but others were still being put together like patchwork. It was like a battle had happened. Kiyoshi looked up at Hokage Mountain again. The only conflict that happened in a time of 4 faces was the 9-tailed fox. If the 9-tailed fox caused this, that meant that he was in the time period when Naruto was alive. But Hiruzen was still the Hokage. The 4-man ninja team brought him to the center of the village to the Hokage's office, which was located by Hokage Mountain. Going inside, they took him to one of the back waiting rooms. Akio, report? The Hokage said. The black-haired Jonin was currently alone and standing at attention in front of the old man's desk. The mission went smoothly, the man answered. There were no complications. We currently have the boy secured in one of the rooms downstairs. The Hokage nodded. Is it like the report said? Akio nodded. I believe so. The boy's eyes are definitely unique. What is your take on him? The Hokage asked. The man sighed. The boy is wary, but I don't think he's hostile. He showed open interest in the village. There is also strong intelligence. He seems to ponder everything he sees. Have you asked him any questions about himself? The Hokage asked. Akio shook his head. No. I figured it wasn't my place. The Hokage nodded. Good. You did well. I'm going to hold a council on the situation. For now, keep an eye on him. I don't want the boy to leave the building. Give him something to do in the meantime. Akio bowed. Yes, Lord Hokage. 3 hours later, the clan heads of Konoha and the 3 village elders stood in the large open Hokage office. Now that we're all here, can you please explain why you called us? Danzo Shimura said irritably. What is so important that you made us all come on such short notice? I am sorry, my friend, the Hokage said placatingly, then he turned to the others. I thank you all for coming so soon. I did not think this matter could wait. Something has happened at the border, or should I say, something has been discovered at the border which could have a great effect on Konoha. The council came to attention. After pausing for effect, the old man continued. 5 days ago, a young boy was found injured and alone by one of the northwest bases. The healers there were able to cure his injuries, and we have transferred him here. The reason why I have called you is because the boy appears to have a unique bloodline limit. More specifically, he has a unique dojutsu. What? Fugaku Uchiha and Hayashi Hyuga both said at the same time, shocked. The Hokage nodded. Indeed. As you can see, I need your advice. The abilities of the dojutsu are unknown, and the child is from rock country. This might cause problems. Tensions are still tight between our villages. It is also believed that the boy is a prodigy, which makes the situation even more dangerous. The room was silent. How old is he? Inoichi Yamanaka asked after a moment. 5 years old? The Hokage said. Inoichi nodded, and the council continued to ponder the situation. You know what this means, don't you? Danzo growled after a moment. Everyone turned to him, confused, and Danzo burst out in frustration. This means IWA has been hiding a unique clan. If they were able to get this past us, then what else have they been hiding? Why didn't we see any sign of this during the war? The Hokage sighed. I agree. Our espionage might have failed in this aspect. It's also possible, however, that this is a first-generation dojutsu. Let's hope that this is the case. Hope? Danzo scoffed. We can't just hope. We need to interrogate the boy. Find out everything he knows. The Yamanaka clan should examine him. Hiruzen frowned. You know that the Yamanaka's techniques are damaging to the unwilling. I don't want the boy damaged. I also do not want to alienate him. So far, he seems neutral to our village. I agree that we need more answers, but if are patient, I believe he will tell us everything he knows. Many of the clan members nodded. The Hokage continued. I do not believe that Konoha is in immediate danger. So far, the border has been quiet. Nobody seems to be looking for the boy, or at least nobody knows where he is. This is to our advantage. I could take him. Danzo offered instantly, almost greedily. In my organization, I could keep him hidden and find out more about his clan and the Dojutsu's abilities. Hiruzen shook his head. No. I don't think we need to do something so drastic. He is still a boy and deserves to have a normal childhood. I also wish for him to form connections in the village. Danzo didn't look happy about it but stayed quiet. Perhaps it would be wise to hide his eyes for a time. Shikaka Nara suggested. A simple pair of sunglasses would do. This would allow us to get more information and prepare against IWA before the boy's location is exposed. It would also allow a more natural integration into the village. If he has a visible dojutsu, then this will undoubtedly cause scrutinization and questions by others. We should keep this matter contained. Many in the room nodded. A dojutsu is nothing to be ashamed of, but I agree with Shikaka's logic, Hayashi Hyuga stated. The Hokage pondered the notion for a moment, then nodded. It is not a bad plan. I will see what can be done. For the time being, this matter is to not be spoken of outside this room. Everyone nodded. Who is going to take guardianship of the boy? Koharu Yuditane then asked. Hiruzen sighed at the old elder. I don't know yet. Though I think it would be wise to have it be someone outside of the clans. The clan heads all nodded at this. It would cause many disagreements among clan elders if another clan had such an influence over a new bloodline. Are there any more questions? The Hokage asked. No one responded. Then this meeting is adjourned. Hiruzen Sarutobi signed once all of the clan heads and advisors had left. Now was the task of finding where place the boy. It couldn't be with a civilian. This matter was much too complex for one. He would need detailed and intelligent reports on a weekly basis. He also didn't wish to put the boy with an easily angered, or a hard and emotionless ninja. Akio would be a good fit. The man was kind, competent, and had already spent some time with the child. He currently didn't have any long-term duties. He was also a jonin, which meant he could protect or secure the boy if necessary. The Hokage nodded. It was perfect. All he had to find out now was if the man was willing. He called an aide to come up. This was done by using a signal seal. All the Umbu and his personal aides had one. His personal aides had it on their arm and his Umbu had it inside a tattoo on their shoulder. The seal linked a bit of the person's chakra directly to the Hokage. This allowed the Hokage to send chakra pulses to certain individuals. The aide came in response to the signaled message and Hiruzen told her to go fetch Akio. The man should be in the waiting room. When the man arrived, the Hokage made the proposal. Akio was hesitant at first but accepted the mission. After that was settled, they both went down to the waiting room. Hiruzen thought it would be better to meet the boy in a more casual setting. He didn't want to intimidate him. Kiyoshi was currently resting on the couch. The boy was stuffed from some restaurant takeout he had been brought, and the long journey had made him tired. Hearing the door open, Kiyoshi looked over and saw the black-haired man and the Hokage come in. Hiruzen looked exactly like a lifelike version of the man in the TV show. Kiyoshi was intrigued, and also a little intimidated. This was the first time he had met a recognizable character from Naruto. And it was a powerful one. Hello young man, my name is Hiruzen Sarutobi. The old man said. I am the Hokage of Konoha. Is it alright if I speak to you for a moment? Kiyoshi sat up and nodded. Do you mind if I sit next to you? The Hokage asked. Kiyoshi shook his head. The old man sat down, turning to him. Your name is Kiyoshi, correct? Kiyoshi nodded. That is a nice name. Have you enjoyed your stay here so far? Kiyoshi nodded again. Everyone had been very hospitable. Is it true that you are from Rock Country? Kiyoshi hesitated but nodded slowly. Did you like it there? That caused Kiyoshi to pause. He had loved living on the farm and he missed it, and his parents deeply. But right now the thought of stepping foot in the country filled him with fear. I miss it, but I don't want to go back there right now, he answered honestly. Why do you not want to go back? The Hokage asked, curious. Kiyoshi swallowed. He didn't want to talk about it. The information, however, was probably something the Hokage should know. If this place was like the Naruto TV show, then there was no love between Konoha and IWA at this time. The Hokage wouldn't punish him for fighting rock ninjas. It would also put him under a lot less suspicion if he cooperated, and the information would help Konoha prepare for any repercussions. Rock ninjas killed my dad, he softly said. They wanted to arrest him and my mom for being unregistered ninjas and for having me. They said I had a Dojutsu and that it was bad for my parents to hide it. My dad ran with me into the forest and my mom ran another way. 2 ninjas followed me and my dad. They caught up to us and there was a battle. My dad and both the ninjas died. Kiyoshi was deliberately left out that he had been the one that killed the 2 ninjas. He didn't want to think about the murders, or to be seen as dangerous. The shaking of the battle caused me to slide down a rock cliff and I was injured. I guess I was able to walk to the borders of Fire Country after that. I didn't know where I was going. The Hokage nodded along solemnly. Kiyoshi swallowed and continued. There was also another ninja there that didn't follow us. He was a middle-aged man with spiky red hair. I think he followed my mom. He knows that I exist, so if my mom didn't kill him, then he has probably told the Sachikage about me. The Hokage frowned at this. If this was true, then it might make things more difficult for Konoha. It was an important thing to mention. Kiyoshi suddenly realized that sharing this information could help in another way. My mom might still be alive though, Kiyoshi said desperately with hope. She might have killed the rock ninja or gotten away. I need to find her. I need to find out what happened. Can you help me? The Hokage pondered the question. It was hard not to sympathize with the boy. The old man nodded. If you give me your mother's name and description, I think I can help you, he said. I will inform my people to keep an eye out for her. I can't send them searching into rock country though. It would be trespassing, and we don't want to start another war. What the Hokage didn't tell the boy was that Konoha trespassed into Iwa all the time, but that was only done with elite covert operatives. Those operatives were skilled, and the missions they performed were dangerous. The Hokage didn't think he could risk his top shinobi for such a mission. If what he deduced was correct, then the boy had a first-generation Dojutsu. This gave his parents less value. It was harsh but true. Just to be sure, he asked the boy. Does your mother have the same eyes as you? Kiyoshi shook his head. She just has purple eyes. His mother lacked the inner red ring. The Hokage nodded, pleased. Purple is not common eye color. This will make it easier for us to find her. The old man was also relieved that he didn't need to worry about Iwa gaining an unknown dojutsu. Hiruzen asked the boy to describe other characteristics of his mother, and then continued on with other questions. The boy was surprisingly talkative. After what he had gone through, the old man would have expected more fear. It seemed like their kind treatment was working. Did your parents train you how to be a ninja? The Hokage asked. The boy nodded. Yeah, my dad taught me a little bit. What did he teach you? The Hokage asked. The boy shrugged. Some chakra stuff. Mostly just how to make my body strong and fast. He also taught me how to fight with a sword. The Hokage nodded. Can you use your dojutsu yet? The old man doubted it, but it didn't hurt to ask. The reaction he got surprised him. The boy looked very calculative. Did this mean that the boy had already activated his eyes? For most dojutsus, it was extremely rare to activate your eyes before the age of 8, and even then, it was considered a great achievement. This boy was only 5. Kiyoshi remained silent and calculative. He didn't know what to say. On one hand, he hated secrets, and would much rather get things out in the open. On the other, he didn't know if he should reveal everything. Kiyoshi could probably trust the Hokage with the information, but he couldn't trust Danzo. Danzo might become interested in or afraid of the capabilities and manipulate the old man into putting him into route. In route, he would be controlled and chained. He could also imagine the questions and experiments that would be asked of him if people found out. His portals were unique and had many functions. He wasn't ready to deal with the curiosity. Right now, he just wanted to be left alone to become more stable in his new situation. I can use my dojutsu, but I don't want to talk about it, Kiyoshi said honestly. Maybe the Hokage would respect his wishes. Hiruzen frowned. He couldn't blame the boy. Everyone was entitled to secrets. The answer disappointed him though. That is okay. We do not know each other very well yet, Kiyoshi sighed in relief. There is another matter I wish to discuss, the Hokage said. Kiyoshi looked up at him. I have talked to the clan heads and the village elders, and we believe that it would be best to hide your eyes for a time. There is a chance that the Rock Nation does not know your location, and we would like to keep it that way. Other people in the village also might try to ask you questions that you do not want to answer. Does this sound okay to you? Kiyoshi thought about it for a moment, and then nodded. How will you hide my eyes? He asked. We can give you a pair of sunglasses to wear, the Hokage said. You can take them off indoors when there is nobody around. Kiyoshi nodded again. That was perfect. It would suit his wishes perfectly. You can also show your eyes to Akio here, the Hokage said, gesturing to the black-haired man who was standing by the door. He is going to be your caretaker. Kiyoshi blinked, studying the black-haired man in a new light. Are you okay with that? The Hokage asked. Kiyoshi nodded. Good, the Hokage said. He will take you home. I look forward to getting to know you, Kiyoshi. Kiyoshi spent the night at Akio's house. Due to the short notice, he slept on the man's couch, but Akio assured him that he would make a room for him soon. Kiyoshi nodded, grateful for such kindness. The next morning Akio took Kiyoshi out to explore the village. It was bright, colorful, and full of life. On Kiyoshi's nose rested a pair of dark sunglasses. An Umbu ninja had come last night and given Akio the face wear as well as some black hair dye to cover Kiyoshi's purple highlights. The colorful strips were an identifying factor. That Sachikage might be aware of the characteristic. With both the hair dye and the glasses, Kiyoshi now looked fairly average. The only minority feature was his olive skin, which was okay. The tone was only rare, not completely foreign. Their cover story was that Kiyoshi was Akio's nephew who had come to see the village in hopes of joining the ninja academy. Akio had a sister who lived in one of the Fire Nation cities, so this was plausible. The man said that if anyone asked, to say his olive skin came from his father. Akio also said that if anyone asked why he was wearing glasses, to say that it was because of an eye condition. Both of these things were true, so Kyoshi didn't see a problem with it. As they walked, 4 auras shadowed them. Kyoshi figured these were Umbu ninjas sent to keep an eye on him. The Umbu were the Hokage's secret military, police, spies, and guards. Ignoring the shadows, Kyoshi walked down a row of shops. One of the shops caught his eye. Its sign read Momo's Blades and Knives. Walking up to the window, he saw a display of beautiful knives and swords. They were all shapes and sizes. A katana was what his father used to fight with. It was a curved single-edged blade with a square or circle guard. A ninjato was a shorter version of that. The shop carried both. Kyoshi had always wanted his own sword. His father had said he was going to get him one when he was older. A sword was important to have for kenjutsu. You could create swords out of chakra, but only real swords could be engraved with seals. Seals were powerful. Real swords also didn't need chakra to stay solid. In long fights, chakra-formed blades would quickly drain you. Kyoshi used metal rods or chakra-formed blades in his past training. His father's blades, sadly, had been too big for him. It had been jealously beautiful. These blades in the window were also beautiful. None of them were engraved like his father's, but Kyoshi couldn't see any flaws. He wanted to reach through the glass and touch them. You like blades? Akio asked, noticing his longing. Kyoshi nodded. Is there any way I can earn some money here? He asked earnestly. He really wanted to buy one. Akio smiled. I'm not sure, but I can ask the Hokage about it. Kyoshi nodded, taking one last look, before continuing on. They stopped at a clothing store next. Akio said the Hokage would cover all of Kyoshi's basic needs. They bought Kyoshi enough clothes to fill a closet. After that, the man led him to a furnishing store and had him pick out a mattress, bed frame, and room accessories. The clothes and items were set to be delivered to the man's house the next day. Then they went out for lunch and stopped and bought groceries. After returning home, they filled the fridge and spent the rest of the day clearing out the man's office for Kyoshi's new room. A few days later, Kyoshi was finally settled in. His room was small but homey. In answer to his money question, the man said that the Hokage had decided to give him an allowance. This money could be used or saved for any extra things he might want. As a welcoming gift, the Hokage also wanted Kyoshi to pick out a weapon at the blade shop. Kyoshi was ecstatic. He picked out a beautiful ninjato, guilty one of the most expensive ones available. It now rested in a sheath strapped to his back. When he asked if he could go train with it, Akio had taken him to a small green field where he could practice his forms and get used to the sword. It felt so nice to be practicing again. It felt even nicer seeing as he could now train with something real. While he trained, Akio would sit under a tree and watch him. A week later, when Akio was walking him home after a training session, Kyoshi turned to the man. Akio, is there a ninja library in Konoha? Kyoshi didn't remember one in the TV show, but it seemed likely. How did a ninja learn new techniques? It couldn't be simply word of mouth. A sensei couldn't teach a student everything. There was just too much difference between styles and abilities. And how did academy students study for exams? Yes, there is a ninja library. Why do you ask? Akio asked. My dad didn't teach me a lot about ninja techniques, and I would like to learn, Kyoshi said. I know how to read. When Kyoshi turned 3 years old, his mother had taught him basic literature and writing. He was competent in it. Well, the ninja center is only open to ninjas or those in the academy, the man said. But I could ask the Hokage for you. Perhaps he will give you a special pass. Kyoshi nodded. A few days later, the boy was told that the Hokage would grant him access to the academy level of the ninja center. Apparently, Ninja Center was what the library was called. The Ninja Center had 4 levels. The main floor was the academy level. The second floor was the genin level, the third was the chunin level, and the fourth was the jonin level. You had to have a student pass to get access to the first level, and you had to show your ninja rank card to get access to any of the other levels. You couldn't go to the levels above your rank. Kyoshi walked through the shelves of the academy level. There were rows of books as well as scrolls organized in large box slots. Each scroll box was labeled and had about 10 to 20 scrolls of the same type. Kyoshi looked at the label names and picked out a few random scrolls. He sat down at a table. Opening the first scroll, he read, Chakra types, basic description and information. Physical chakra. Physical chakra resides in a person's core and chakra veins. It is visible to one's eye and causes physical damage when used. It can be shaped into all physical things. Spiritual chakra. Spiritual chakra resides in a person's aura. This chakra is invisible to one's eye and is used to shape physical chakra. Mental chakra. It is unknown where mental chakra resides as it cannot be seen or felt. Mental chakra is used to direct spiritual chakra. Okay, that was pretty basic. Kyoshi opened the next scroll. Main jutsu types, basic description and information. Ninjutsu. Ninjutsu is the art of physical techniques performed outside of one's body. Ninjutsu needs mental, spiritual, and physical chakra to perform. It causes physical damage. Genjutsu. Genjutsu is the art of illusions. It uses mental and spiritual chakra to manipulate others' mental and spiritual chakra. It does not cause physical damage. Taijutsu. Taijutsu is the art of enhancing one's body. A person will then use their body to inflict damage. Kiyoshi nodded and continued on to the next scroll. This one caught his attention. Sensors, basic description and information. Natural sensors. Natural sensors are ninjas with high levels of spiritual chakra. Spiritual chakra forms around all living things in an aura. Auras naturally get denser the closer they get to their source. Big auras will have dense cores, and small auras will have thin cores. All auras can sense physical chakra within them. In parts where an aura is dense, it will sense things more clearly. Natural sensors have big enough auras that their cores are dense enough to sense spiritual chakra. This gives the ninja the natural ability to not only detect physical chakra at far distances, but also gives them the ability to sense another spiritual aura if it is close. Trained sensors. Trained sensors are ninjas who have trained to condense and send their spiritual chakra to certain areas. This allows a ninja with medium or low levels of spiritual chakra to sense spiritual chakra or sense physical chakra at farther distances. Elite sensor. Elite sensors are trained natural sensors. Elite sensors can scan spiritual chakra at far distances and can scan and interpret one's emotions through spiritual chakra. Sensor downside. The downside of being a sensor is your exposure to other sensors. Dense spiritual chakra can be detected more easily than thin spiritual chakra. This makes sensors the easiest to target and locate. Kiyoshi frowned at the last paragraph. Sensors were highly exposed to other sensors? That wasn't good. He had already deduced that he was a natural sensor. That meant he was a natural beacon. Stealth was something that interested him. It was something he wanted to learn for a while now. He loved staying in the shadows and observing. If his spiritual chakra was so obvious to others, then his dreams were ruined. Kiyoshi pondered on the problem. There had to be a technique that hid spiritual chakra. Kiyoshi got up and searched the shelves until he found what he was looking for. Chakra stealth, basic description and information. Physical chakra stealth. Physical chakra stealth is when you hide your physical chakra from others. The easiest way to hide physical chakra is to not use it. Physical chakra is naturally sealed inside a person's core and main chakra veins. If it is sealed, it cannot be detected. Advanced physical chakra stealth involves sealing physical chakra within spiritual chakra. Doing this allows only sensors to detect when techniques are performed. Spiritual chakra stealth. Spiritual chakra stealth is needed to hide from sensors. To hide spiritual chakra, one must expand their aura. Sensors can only sense auras at certain densities. When one expands their aura, it becomes less dense. The more you expand your aura, the less likely it is that you will be detected. The downside of this technique is that the more you expand your aura, the more you will lose the ability to sense chakra. You will also not be able to perform techniques that require spiritual chakra. Kiyoshi nodded. This matched what the zombie man had done. Thinking back, the cloaked man had only obtained an aura once he had started to fight. He must have gathered his spiritual chakra. But if what the scroll had said was true, then how did the man know that he was in the barn? He didn't feel the man at the time. With an expanded aura, the man's senses would have been completely gone. Kiyoshi mentally slapped himself. Expanding your aura only affected your ability to sense chakra, not your other senses. Constantly feeling people's auras made Kiyoshi forget there were physical ways to track or detect someone. That made Kiyoshi feel even worse for not hiding. His father hadn't taught him to hide his aura, but there had been physical ways to hide. Pacing in front of a bright lantern was not the way to do it. If he had hidden, then maybe the cloaked man would have passed him by. Kiyoshi sighed. There was no way to change what had happened now. The only thing he could do was try to prevent the same thing from happening in the future. He was going to learn stealth. To do that, he needed to learn how to hide his chakra and how to hide from physical senses. He also needed to learn how to use his physical senses better. Coming to this decision, he moved on and picked up another scroll. This one was the most interesting. Medical ninjutsu, basic description and information. Medical ninjutsu is the art of healing yourself and others. It requires extreme chakra control as well as extensive knowledge of potions and anatomy. Medical ninjutsu can also be used offensively against opponents. Kiyoshi stared at the scroll longingly. This art resonated with him even more than kenjutsu. The sport of kenjutsu was thrilling, but in serious situations, he preferred healing over fighting. He hated violence and causing people pain. He also didn't want to be helpless again as he watched someone die. If something like his father's injury happened again, he wanted to be prepared. Kiyoshi looked at the requirements. Okay, so he needed to learn potions and anatomy. He could do that. It would be mostly facts, right? The only question was chakra control. The scroll said that medical ninjutsu required an extreme level. Kiyoshi searched the shelves. When he found the desired scroll, he opened it. Chakra control, basic description and information. Chakra control is the ability to control and shape chakra. Chakra control comes from having the right balance of mental, spiritual, and physical chakra in your techniques. Your mental chakra must be equal to or higher than your spiritual chakra. And your spiritual chakra must be equal to or higher than your physical chakra. Having an imbalance of this will cause strain or loss of control. Kiyoshi nodded thoughtfully. This was probably why Naruto in the TV show had such a hard time controlling and implementing techniques at first. The yellowed-haired boy had so much physical chakra that it was hard to hold back and form the right balance. This would also explain why losing focus made you lose control over techniques. Mental chakra must come from imagination, focus, and determination. This mental energy somehow moved spiritual chakra, which in turn moved physical chakra. If you naturally had more mental and spiritual chakra, then performing complex techniques came more naturally. If you naturally had less physical chakra, then performing complex techniques also came more naturally. Kyoshi had large amounts of spiritual chakra. This was perfect for complex arts, as long as he had enough mental chakra. Kyoshi went and asked Akio if it was alright to check out some of the scrolls and books. It wouldn't be nice to keep the man waiting all day. Akio said he could, so Kyoshi got 2 scrolls on physical stealth and textbooks on anatomy, poisons, and herbs. Hopefully, that would keep him busy for the rest of the week. 2 weeks later, Kyoshi walked alone through the village. A week ago, Akio had stopped following him, and he was free to explore by himself. This was probably due to orders from the Hokage. The old man probably wanted to see what Kyoshi would do without an audience. Kyoshi liked the new freedom. Even though he was still being shadowed by Umbu, it felt nice not to have to deal with direct scrutiny or questions. For the past 2 weeks, Kyoshi had trained with his sword and studied healing. He had also started to practice stealth by walking with precision on a grass training field. Now he wanted a bigger challenge. How would stealth techniques work on sticks and leaves? Reaching a large forest area, Kyoshi walked deep into it, practicing his steps and enjoying the sounds of peaceful birds. His steps were getting pretty quiet. Kyoshi hoped that one day stealth walking would become second nature. His focus was drawn elsewhere when he suddenly felt a faint spike of chakra. Curious, Kyoshi headed in that direction, continuing his stealth practice. As Kyoshi got closer, flashes of chakra became stronger and clearer. Getting even closer, Kyoshi began to feel a person's aura. Kyoshi thought that this was a great place to test his stealth progress, so he crept even closer. Peering through the bushes into an open clearing, Kyoshi blinked at what he saw. There was a young boy, about his age, practicing kenjutsu. His body was enhanced with chakra, his sword swings blurring together with great speed. Occasionally he would stop his forms and blast an area with fireballs. The boy was amazing. He looked just as good as him. The boy jumped, flipped, and then threw some ninja stars at a nearby tree. They all lined up in the center of the trunk. The boy then landed in a crouch. The boy turned and looked at him. Kyoshi cringed. Apparently, his stealth needed work. The boy raised an eyebrow at him and continued to stare, politely waiting for him to leave. Kyoshi blinked back. Kyoshi had noticed that the boy had the symbol of the Uchiha clan on the back of his shirt as he fought. Now that he had turned, Kyoshi could also see that he had pronounced her tracks on his face. Was this Itachi Uchiha? The boy had the exact features of the character from the TV show, and Itachi was also the only Uchiha he knew of that was this skilled at this age. Kyoshi didn't know the exact time period he was at. He hadn't run into any other characters on the show besides Hiruzen. If this was Itachi, he looked to be around 5 or 6. That meant the nine-tailed fox attack happened fairly recently. Naruto was still a baby. Hi, Kyoshi chirped lamely. Itachi stared dully back. After a moment, the Uchiha raised his eyebrows again. Do you need something? Kyoshi scratched the back of his neck sheepishly. No, I was just walking by, he said, stepping out from behind the bush. Your sword skills are really good. Itachi's blank emotion didn't change. You're really fast. Could I train with you? Kyoshi blurted, not knowing where the question had come from. After he said it, however, Kyoshi realized that it was something he really wanted to do. Itachi was considered a prodigy. Even if he hadn't seen his skills, he'd want to train with him. I like kenjutsu too, Kyoshi said to the still silent boy, pointing to the sword strapped to his back. I don't have anyone to fight with. Itachi looked reluctant. Before the Uchiha could provide an excuse, Kyoshi continued. We can just do one duel. One duel and I'll leave. Please, please, please. Kyoshi mentally pleaded. Itachi must have seen the hope and eagerness in his eyes. Very well, he sighed, as if the quickest way to dismiss him. One duel, yes. Kyoshi nearly jumped in joy. He reached behind him and unsheathed his sword. Do you know how to coat your blade with dulling chakra? Itachi tilted his head curiously but nodded. Kyoshi smiled. Okay, let's do that. And is it okay if we focus just on kenjutsu? Kyoshi didn't know a lot of other things, and he really didn't want to be blasted with a fireball. Itachi nodded again. Kyoshi smiled, walking over to the other end of the clearing and readying into a stance. He then sent a tiny bit of chakra to his face to stick his dark sunglasses to it. It wouldn't do to have them fall off. Itachi got into a ready stance too, staring and becoming more focused. Kyoshi took that as his cue and rushed forward, pushing chakra into his legs. Kenjutsu was like taijutsu except you used a blade along with your body. Wind from his speed brushed Kyoshi's hair back as he attacked. The force of the impact caused a ripple of dust to spread out away from the clashing blades. The boys then broke apart and clashed again, and again, and again, Kyoshi attacking while the other black-haired boy defended. At this point, they were simply testing each other. As they continued, the fight slowly began to build up speed. Kyoshi was having a blast. This was the first time since leaving the farm that he had felt true joy. After a fierce attack, Kiyoshi blasted away from the other boy, backflipping and landing across the clearing. He nodded down to his sword, communicating that it was Itachi's turn to go on offense. Itachi at this point was breathing visibly. His eyes were full of shock and wonder. Snapping out his state, the Uchiha responded to the silent invitation, rushing towards Kiyoshi. Kiyoshi grinned and braced himself. They clashed, and Itachi began to attack Kiyoshi with great ferocity. After about 10 seconds, Kiyoshi found an opening and shifted his defense into an attack, putting Itachi on defense. Swords blurred to the point that they almost created after images. The boys were now using their full speed. Itachi finally left himself open and Kiyoshi struck hard and fast. His sword hit Itachi in the stomach and sent the boy flying. Kiyoshi watched Itachi tumble through the air and slam into a tree, creating an indent. The Uchiha boy stayed stuck to the tree for a moment before crashing to the ground. Itachi didn't move from his face plant. Kiyoshi panicked and rushed over to him, almost shouting the boy's name out in worry, before realizing that he wasn't supposed to know it yet. Hey, are you alright? He asked, coming up and kneeling down next to the still form. Itachi mumbled something into the dirt, and Kiyoshi sighed in relief. Good. He didn't kill him. With dulling chakra, his blade had been as sharp as a baseball bat. But a baseball bat could still kill someone with enough force. The Uchiha boy slowly rose from the ground and leaned up against the back of the tree he had crashed into. He held his stomach and breathed out in pain. Then he looked at Kiyoshi. The boy's face didn't show any anger, only bewilderment. Who are you? He asked, gasping. Kiyoshi scratched the back of his neck, apparently something he did commonly when he was embarrassed. My name is Kiyoshi. I just moved here, he answered. Kiyoshi then tilted his head at the boy and asked, What's your name? It would be good to be sure of the boy's identity, and to not have to worry about slipping up again. Itachi, the boy replied. Itachi Uchiha. The boy studied Kiyoshi after he said his last name, searching for some kind of reaction. Kiyoshi just nodded in response. He had already suspected that. Well, it is nice to meet you, Itachi, he said, smiling. Thank you for the fight. It's been a while since I've trained against someone. And I've never fought against someone my own size before. It was like real adult sword fighting. Itachi nodded in agreement. I have not fought a skilled opponent as small as you either, he said after a moment. Maybe we can do it again sometime? Kiyoshi suggested. He had promised to leave after the duel, but he hoped the Uchiha would agree to fight with him again now that he knew he could give him a challenge. Itachi thought about it. Yes, I believe that would be beneficial, he said. I come here almost every afternoon after the academy. You can meet me here. Kiyoshi beamed, and then got up and walked out of the clearing. Kiyoshi spent almost every day after that training with Itachi. In the mornings he would study stealth and healing, and in the afternoon he would train his sword skills against the boy. They both improved a lot with the training arrangement. Both boys were getting faster and stronger, and were experimenting with more complex attacks. It soon became obvious that Kiyoshi was better at kenjutsu. He won every fight. Due to this, Itachi began to use projectiles and jutsus to balance the playing field. Long range was Kiyoshi's weakness. Without portals, he only knew how to attack things directly. Projectiles were coated in dulling chakra, and the density of the fire jutsus was lessened to make them only sting. Still, getting hit by them made Kiyoshi determined to get some long-range moves of his own. Itachi had lent him a few weapons and had given him some pointers for throwing stars and knives. Kiyoshi was steadily progressing. Now he needed to learn chakra techniques. This was why Kiyoshi was currently sitting in his room with a number of textbooks and scrolls laid out around him. Most jutsus required seals to perform. These could be either hand seals or written seals. Written seals were designs created with chakra ink, blood, or indents. Hand seals were specific hand motions, made in certain sequences. Both had their strengths and weaknesses. Hand seals were easier to make in battle as they could be made in the air in front of you as you moved. Written seals generally took more time and were permanent. Because of this, hand seals were usually made in battle and written seals were usually made before battle. Written seals were good for traps or instant activation, and hand seals were better at being versatile and limitless. Seals basically autopilot the jutsu. Most seals were incomplete, which meant that a ninja usually had to do something along with it to make it work. But if you did know a complete seal and created it correctly, then the seal would take your chakra and perform an entire jutsu on its own. Different hand signs or line markings autopilot different parts of a jutsu. Some would control the chakra type, some would control the chakra nature, and some would control the shape, speed, or movement of a jutsu. No one knew why certain shapes controlled certain things. It was one of the greatest mysteries. It was assumed that a seal's shape somehow instructed mental chakra. This in turn would shape spiritual chakra, which in turn would shape physical chakra. This resulted in the creation of all jutsu. To understand seals you had to spend hours upon hours of study and memorization to start to understand the correlations and patterns between the shapes or signs. This was the only way you had a chance at creating new seals. Seals were heavily guarded, especially unique seals. Every seal was a new piece to the puzzle that held new knowledge that could be implemented into existing seals. This was one of the reasons why the Sharingan Dojutsu was so feared. One of the Sharingan's abilities was to slow down the perception of time. It could slow down time enough that its user could study an opponent's hand or written seals when used in battle. If the Sharingan user understood seals, this meant they could know exactly what to expect. If the Sharingan user had a photographic memory, this meant that the user could steal unique seals for themselves or their village. Seals were an aid. They were teachers, and dangerous in an enemy's hand. Ninjas trained to use fewer hand signs or brush strokes gradually throughout their ninja career to improve speed and secrecy. All jutsus could be made manually if you had the knowledge and skill. Right now Kyoshi was learning to perform the clone jutsu. This academy technique was a genjutsu, not a ninjutsu like the shadow clone jutsu. It created the illusion of clones, not physical ones. The academy transformation technique was the same. Turning yourself into another person was just an illusion you cast on yourself and your enemy. It was important to cast the illusion on yourself as well as your opponent when first starting out. This was so you could see if you were doing it right. After some persuasion, Akio accepted the task of being the victim of Kyoshi's genjutsu. The boy would cast it on the man, and the man would tell him if it was working. Genjutsu required only mental and spiritual chakra. It also had a seal. Because of this, the two techniques were easy to learn and Kyoshi quickly mastered them. Moving on, Kyoshi was frustrated to find that the academy didn't teach any ninjutsu. Genjutsu could be performed from a distance, but it could only be used to deceive an enemy. It didn't cause physical damage. Because of this, Kyoshi decided he would practice written seals. His father had taught him many seals back on the farm. They never got to the point of actually using them, but Kyoshi had spent more than 100 hours studying, drawing, and memorizing. Seeing how much seals were valued and guarded in the ninja world made Kyoshi very grateful for the knowledge. The scrolls were in rock country. He couldn't retrieve them. Even if it was safe to go back, he didn't know where his house was. The knowledge would have been lost. Thankfully, the only thing to learn now was how to engrave. Most of the seals he knew were designed to be put on a sword. Sword seals shouldn't be too hard. Kyoshi knew that all you need was an indent. Those indents needed to be perfect and smooth, but it didn't get more technical than that. All he needed was the right tools and practice. The next morning Kyoshi walked around the village until he found a small shop that read Joe's Custom Engraving. The shop had high windows, so Kyoshi couldn't see inside. He shrugged and went and opened the door, the bell above it ringing. The room was empty. The only thing in it was a service counter. Behind the service counter was an open door that led to a back room. There was a civilian-level aura in that area, so Kyoshi assumed that was where the owner was. The owner came out after a moment and looked around in expectation, having heard the bell. It took the man a minute to shift his gaze downward to where Kyoshi stood. The man looked at him, then looked around the shop again as if searching for someone else. Kyoshi figured the man was searching for his guardian. To the man, Kyoshi looked like a normal 5-year-old. "Hello, young man," the man said after a moment, confused but kind. "Is there something I can do for you? Is this where you engrave things into metal?" Kyoshi asked. The man tilted his head. "It is. I can also engrave things into other materials." "Why do you ask?" Kyoshi pointed to the sword strapped to his back. "I want to carve some designs into my sword, and I was hoping to get some tools to do it. Do you have any for sale, or do you know where I can get some?" The man smiled at that, putting his hands on his hips. "So you're a young artist, are you?" Kyoshi nodded, keeping his face blank. The man probably thought he just wanted to make his sword look fancy. "Well," the man said ponderously, "I ordered all my tools in from outside of Konoha. Engraving is not a huge trade, you know. I could probably give you some of my spare tools if you have money to pay for them." "I have money," Kyoshi said confidently. He hadn't spent any of his allowance from the Hokage except at an ice cream shop that he was addicted to. He had a good amount saved up. The man nodded and went to the back room. A little while later he came out with an arm full of tools. Coming out around the counter, he then laid them out on the floor so the small boy could see. The engraving blades were electric, having cords with plugs coming out of their handles. They were perfect. Kyoshi had an outlet in his room. The boy knew that he was going about engraving in a civilian way, but he didn't care. What worked right? Maybe sometime in the future, he could learn how ninjas did it. "Are you sure your parents will be okay with this?" the man suddenly asked, as Kyoshi examined the tools. The man seemed to realize only then that he was offering a child sharp electric blades. "Yeah," Kyoshi said simply, quickly getting off the subject. "Can I have one of each size?" Seals had thin lines and thick lines within them. He would need multiple size blades. The man scratched his head at the request. "How much money do you have?" he asked. Kyoshi told him the full amount. The man nodded ponderously. "That should probably cover it. These blades are used, so I can sell you them for that." He smiled. "It's the least I can do for a fellow artist." Kyoshi smiled back, showing his thanks. Another thought occurred to him, and Kyoshi scratched the back of his neck. You wouldn't happen to know of a place where I can get some pieces of scrap metal, would you? I want something to practice on." Kyoshi did not want to ruin his new sword. Seals engraved in metal were not easy to erase. He would need to practice long and hard before he tried anything on his ninjato. The man smiled at the request. "I have a pile in the back. I'll put some in with your order. He went and got the metal scrapes and then rolled it up with a set of 7 engravers into a paper package. He then gave the package to the boy. Kiyoshi gave the man his money in response. The man looked surprised that Kiyoshi didn't need to set down the package to do so. Kiyoshi's physical muscles were very strong for a civilian child. He could carry the 20-pound package under one arm without chakra. Smiling and waving goodbye, Kiyoshi walked out the door. He couldn't wait to get started. Not far away, at the same time, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat at his desk in the Hokage's office, patiently listening to his friend's complaints. Danzo was in constant worry about Kiyoshi's situation. The man was uptight about things that affected Konoha's security. Hiruzen was grateful for his advisor's concern and strategic opinions, but at times the Hokage thought the man was a bit harsh and cynical. This was one of those times. That boy is spending too much time with the Uchiha heir, Danzo shouted. You must interfere, the Hokage sighed, having heard this before. Danzo had come in 3 weeks ago when the man heard that Kiyoshi and Itachi were meeting together. Itachi is a good kid, the Hokage said, not changing his opinion on the matter. I think it is beneficial for both of the boys to have someone their own age to be with. I do not see why this troubles you. The Uchihas cannot be trusted, Danzo shouted. The Uchiha heir might be fine for the moment, but what about the future? How much control will the Uchihas have over the boy then? What lies has the boy already been told? The Uchihas are just as much of a part of this village as any other clan, Hiruzen said sternly. They should be respected. There is no proof that they had anything to do with the attack. Yes, there are tensions between the clan and village, but a lot of those tensions come from you constantly seeing the Uchihas as an enemy. We need to let go of the past and live for the future. We should learn from the past, the advisor growled angrily, then shook his head and sighed at the Hokage's hard gaze. Straightening, Danzo realized that the Hokage's opinion could not be swayed, so the advisor moved to a different topic. The boy has still not revealed his Dojutsu. How long are you going to let this continue? I do not want to push the boy until he is ready, the Hokage sighed. Sometimes he swore Danzo never listened. Kiyoshi does not seem to want to cause harm to the village, and the council agreed that it was best to keep his Dojutsu hidden for a time. I do not mean expose his Dojutsu to the public, Danzo growled irritably. I mean simply get the boy to show us what it can do. Privately. We need this information to properly prepare Konoha. The boy might seem innocent, but he is dangerous. His known skills are already formidable. We know little about him, the Hokage pondered the words. The man had a point. Danzo calmed, seeming to realize that he was actually taking his words seriously, and let him think. An idea formed in the Hokage's mind, something that might let the Hokage and Danzo get their way in some aspects. Very well, the Hokage said. I will convince the boy to show us his Dojutsu under one condition. Danzo lifted his chin. If the boy becomes a ninja of Konoha, the Hokage said. I want him to be put on a team with Itachi. What? Danzo exploded. The Hokage continued before Danzo could say more. If we want Kiyoshi to stay alive long enough to form a clan, then he will need to have good teammates. That, or he will need to stay in Konoha. Kiyoshi's abilities are too good to waste. Itachi is the best student at the academy. His skills are far above any of the others in the graduating class. Kiyoshi and Itachi have already formed a good relationship and will work well together. You always say to use our ninja skills to their fullest. If Kiyoshi were to skip the academy and get on a genin team with Itachi right after graduation, we would have a very formidable team in just a few months. Danzo was silent for a long moment. The Hokage hoped the man would see the logic. Forming genin teams was between himself, Jonin sensei, and academy instructors, but Hiruzen didn't want to become Danzo's enemy. They both knew that Kiyoshi was qualified to become a genin. Akio had reported that the boy had mastered all the academy's jutsus and could read and write. Give him a few books on geography and history and he'd be set. Graduating would just be a formality. It was frightening how fast Kiyoshi learned. The clone and transformation jutsus required high levels of observation and imagination to perfect. Students spent months, if not years, studying and memorizing body details to do it properly. Kiyoshi, however, created convincing illusions almost effortlessly. This was more proof that the boy was extremely skilled in imagery and transference. His first clue was the boy's drawings that the healers at the border had sent. They were ones of a skilled artist. It was astounding and rare for someone so young. The boy needed to be protected. Despite this, Danzo still wasn't convinced, so the Hokage added an incentive. If you support teaming Itachi and Kiyoshi together, you can be the first to witness Kiyoshi's Dojutsu. I promise I will get the boy to demonstrate it. That finally broke his friend's stubbornness, and Danzo sighed. Very well. The bandaged man then walked out of the room. 2 days later Kiyoshi sat in his bedroom, staring at his ninjato in anticipation. For the past 2 days the boy had spent hours practicing engraving. He had finally mastered it to a point that his lines were smooth and sharp. Kiyoshi could already make perfect seals on paper. Now he could transfer that knowledge onto metal. Sword seals were long in shape and were designed to wrap and curl around a blade. They could be warped and stretched in certain areas so that they could fit many types of blades. Kiyoshi would have to use this knowledge, as his sword was shorter than a katana. Katana outline pictures were what he usually drew on. Sword seals had two sides, most being mirror images of each other. The trick was making sure these images matched up perfectly along each edge. Kiyoshi hoped the seals worked. He'd never actually tried one, and there were so many things that had to be perfect. Kiyoshi also had to think carefully about which seal he wanted to put on his ninjato. You could only put one seal on a sword. Crossing different seals made things malfunction and explode. Kiyoshi decided to put on a lightning bolt seal. This seal would basically transform his chakra into lightning, which would bolt out from the tip of his sword in a powerful beam. It was a long-range technique, which was something he needed. It also honored his father in a way. A lightning bolt was the last thing his father had created to protect him. A knock at his bedroom door drew Kiyoshi out of his thoughts. "Yes?" he answered. Akio opened the door. "Kiyoshi, the Hokage would like to speak to you. He is waiting downstairs." Kiyoshi blinked, focusing on the aura of the old man. How had he not noticed it? This project was taking most of his attention. Looking at Akio, Kiyoshi saw that the man had turned his eyes from him and was studying the sword in Kiyoshi's lap. Kiyoshi quickly set it aside. The man knew he was doing something with engraving. The constant grinding was a dead giveaway, but the man didn't know the purpose. When asked about it, Kiyoshi had just said that he was learning the art. Now though, due to the narrowed eyes, the man probably suspected something more. Seals and swords were likely seen together often in the ninja world. Luckily, the Hokage was waiting, so the man didn't ask about it. Kiyoshi passed him and went downstairs. "Hello Kiyoshi," Hokage said when he came into the living room. "How are you doing today?" "Okay sir," Kiyoshi answered respectfully. "Good," the old man said. "Could I sit down and talk to you for a minute?" Kiyoshi shrugged. The Hokage sat on the couch and Kiyoshi climbed up and sat on the other end, his feet dangling off the floor. Akio remained standing by the stairs and leaned his back against the railing, listening in. "How have you been enjoying your stay in Konoha so far?" the Hokage asked. Kiyoshi gave a small smile. "It's been nice. Thank you for the new sword. I really appreciate it." The Hokage nodded good-naturedly. "It was my pleasure. Akio told me that you are quite skilled with it. Do you want to be a ninja someday?" The tone was casual, but the sharp intensity in the old man's eyes told him that the question was serious. Kiyoshi blinked. He knew he would probably get asked this eventually. "I don't know, maybe," he shrugged. It was the truth. He really didn't know if he wanted to become a ninja, at least not a serving one. He definitely wanted to study and learn new techniques, but a serving ninja had responsibilities and needed to obey orders. The Hokage frowned a little at the lack of enthusiasm. "Do you like ninjas?" he asked. The boy had shown no hostility towards Akio or any other person as far as he was aware, but maybe the child still had some lingering resentment for what ninjas did to his parents. "I'm grateful for ninjas," Kiyoshi said. Kiyoshi didn't hold the same views as his father. Not all ninjas were cruel and bloodthirsty. The ones in Konoha had saved his life and treated him with kindness. Ninjas enforced the law. Some ninjas might be corrupt, and some might have corrupt leaders, but citizens needed their life, liberty, and property protected. There were people out there that would take it otherwise. The role was important. The Hokage seemed to know what he was thinking. Ninjas of Konoha strive to help and protect others. It is the will of fire. "Would you like to help protect people, Kiyoshi?" Kiyoshi nodded hesitantly. The Hokage smiled. "Being a ninja is not easy," the old man said. "Sometimes you will be asked to do difficult things. But I think that you would be good at it. Would you like to try it out?" Kiyoshi blinked. "So soon?" The Hokage's eager tone gave the impression that this was not some distant thing. "Could I stop being one if I wanted to?" Kiyoshi asked. He remembered that some ninjas in the TV show were declared criminals simply for leaving their village. If life as a ninja became boring, morally challenging, or strenuous, he wanted a way out. The Hokage nodded. Ninjas in Konoha are allowed to retire when they wish. The only exception is that you are not allowed to do so in the middle of a battle or mission. Retired ninjas are also not allowed to share techniques or knowledge that they learned from service without permission. Kiyoshi nodded. That was reasonable. "I guess I can try it out," he said. The Hokage smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. I would like to put you on a genin team in a few months. Most children need to graduate from the academy to do this, but Akio said that you can already read and do basic jutsus. Your skills are good enough to graduate. Akio will help you study for the written exam. There is only one other thing that I would like you to do." "What?" Kiyoshi asked, curious. "To be put on a team I need to know all of your abilities," the old man said. "This is so I can pick the right team members for you. I need you to show me your Dojutsu." Silence. Kiyoshi looked down, troubled. "I would like for you to show me and a few other people what it can do," the Hokage clarified. "This is so we can know where and how to use you. Could you do that?" Kiyoshi continued to think. The Hokage had been patient with him. Honestly, he was surprised he hadn't been ordered to do something like this sooner. Based on the gifts, Anbu guards, and Ninja Guardian he had received, Dojutsu seemed to be valued in Konoha. Was it smart to refuse the request? Konoha had faults, but out of all the major villages, it seemed the most ethical. Konoha was also strong enough to protect him. Kyoshi needed strong allies if he wanted to survive. Resisting the Hokage would not contribute to this. I guess so, he finally said. He couldn't hide forever. Thank you, Kyoshi, the Hokage said in relief. This is a big help. I would like you to do a demonstration tomorrow. There I would like to see your full skills as a ninja. Does that sound good? Kyoshi nodded. Is there anything you need me to bring to help you demonstrate your skills? The Hokage asked. Kyoshi shook his head. If he wanted to show his portal's absorption powers, he could just take out something from his golden realm, and then put it back in. And the Hokage already knew that he practiced kenjutsu. He would bring an opponent if he wanted something more than sword forms. The Hokage nodded and got up. Okay, I will see you tomorrow. I look forward to it. The next morning Kyoshi's stomach was in knots. Today was the day he was going to reveal his dojutsu. Akio had gotten instructions on where to go last night. Right now they were headed to Konoha's outskirts. Kyoshi carried his sword with him. It wasn't engraved yet since the Hokage had intruded on his plans. A seal was not something you could rush, Kyoshi sighed. At least the Hokage had decided to do the demonstration in the morning. That meant he didn't have to skip his training with Itachi. That was his favorite part of the day. The Uchiha didn't ask a lot of personal questions. They simply learned and trained. Testing his skills in the quiet forest was always something he looked forward to. Akio took him into a dense forest which, after a while, opened up into a large open green field. The field was empty except for a small group of people off to the side near its edge. The figures were all recognizable. The Hokage was wearing his classic red and white robes. Standing next to the Hokage was a man wrapped in bandages with a cross-shaped scar on his chin. Kyoshi's frowned. That must be Danzo. Great. The shady advisor's personal attention was the last thing he needed. Standing next to Danzo was a man with a black spiky ponytail that had 2 scars on the right side of his face. He also had a goatee and pierced ears. Kyoshi assumed this man was Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan. The last person made Kyoshi's eyes widen in surprise. Standing next to Shikaku was a teenager with white silver hair. He had a slanted headband across one eye, and the bottom of his face was covered with a black mask. I was Kakashi Hatake. At least, it looked like him. What was he doing here? Wasn't he supposed to be an Umbu right now? There was no sign of an animal mask or the standard Umbu uniform. Kakashi simply wore a black flak jacket with a long-sleeved shirt. Looking closer, Kyoshi could see that there was a ninjato strapped to the teenager's back. Was Kakashi going to be his opponent? Why pick Kakashi out of all people? Looking at the teenager, Kyoshi guessed Kakashi's size might have something to do with it. Kakashi was taller than him, but the teenager was still a head shorter than all the adults present. Kakashi was also an Umbu and the son of the White Fang, so the teenager was most likely very good at kenjutsu. Kyoshi swallowed. Hello Kyoshi, the Hokage smiled once they were near. I'm glad you could make it. Kyoshi kept studying the people around him in response. It was bizarre to see so many characters from a TV show. He still didn't quite believe this was reality. This is Danzo and Shikaku, my good friends, the Hokage said, gesturing to the men, and this is Kakashi. He will be your opponent today to help you demonstrate your abilities. Kyoshi looked at the silver-haired teenager. Kakashi stared dully back. There was no emotion in the expression. The teenager gave a brief polite nod, and Kyoshi nodded back in greeting. We don't know anything about your dojutsu abilities, the Hokage continued. I thought it would be easier for you to simply show us. Since we are unaware, please start out slow and do not do anything that will permanently hurt or kill Kakashi. That goes for your other skills as well. Kakashi will do the same. Kyoshi blinked. The silver-haired boy was a jonin, an Umbu, and a genius. Did the Hokage seriously think he could hurt him? The old man had a point though. His portal technique was dangerous. Since Kakashi didn't know its capabilities, the teenager might end up like the powerful rock ninjas Kyoshi had murdered. He would keep the Hokage's words in mind. This is a friendly duel, the Hokage continued. So be careful. Are you ready? Kyoshi straightened and nodded. He then gestured to his sunglasses as he looked at Akio. Akio nodded and Kyoshi took off the glasses and handed them over. The glasses would get in the way and made things harder to see. Besides, this was supposed to be a dojutsu demonstration. He and Kakashi then walked to the center of the field and then turned and walked to opposite ends. The 4 audience members stood watching on the sideline. Kyoshi unsheathed his sword from his back and got into a ready stance. Kakashi did the same. Seeing that as his cue, Kyoshi immediately rushed at the teenager. He wasn't one for dramatics. They clashed blades and started up a quick series of strikes and dodges. As they quickened the pace, both covered dulling chakra over their swords. Kyoshi was grateful that Kakashi took the precaution. Even if the teenager was more skilled, accidents could happen. As the duel continued, Kakashi's movements got faster. Kyoshi was already pushed to the limit, so it wasn't long before Kakashi got a strike in. Kyoshi was sent tumbling across the grass. The boy managed to roll into a crouch 10 yards away. Kakashi stood ready and waiting. Kyoshi turned to the audience, and figured that they had probably seen enough of his sword skills, so decided to switch tactics. His red and purple-ringed eyes illuminated. Kakashi tensed, having either seen or felt the difference. The outside purple rings of Kyoshi's eyes blinked in brightness as he pushed and cut off 5 purple wisps from his eyes. They were short and small like commas. A portal's size did not affect the energy's strength or sharpness. Making them small would save chakra. Flipping all the wisps counterclockwise, quarter-sized purple portals flared to life. Kyoshi let Kakashi and the 4 audience members examine them for a moment before he sent them towards his opponent, the portals swarming around in the air like bugs. Kakashi flared chakra into his sword and swiped at one as it came close. The chakra-covered sword was immediately sliced in half when it touched the purple energy. Nothing so far had been able to stop Kyoshi's portals. The boy also didn't know how to make them harmless. Because of this, Kyoshi allowed the attack so the teenager knew what the energy was capable of. Then Kyoshi picked up speed, rotating the portals around in a frenzy. Kakashi dodged out of the swarm and put some distance between them. The purple portals came at the teenager again, and Kakashi flashed over to a different part of the field. At a distance, Kakashi blasted the portals with different techniques. New elemental awareness flared into Kyoshi's soul sporadically, and the boy smiled. He deactivated the purple portals and pushed out matching red wisps from his eyes. 5 quarter-sized red portals flared to life. Kakashi watched the red portals come towards him warily. The teenager tried destroying the red portals with techniques as well, but the red portals were solid and unbreakable. In addition, firing at red portals proved to be dangerous. The red energy reflected back some of Kakashi's techniques when they hit at the right angle. Kakashi retreated, and Kyoshi waited, biding his time. The boy had attached the 5 red portals to the bubbles that held Kakashi's elemental jutsus. Since the purple portals had been open for a time before being blasted, the red portals had to get rid of some empty air before any jutsus came out. When the jutsus were nearing the exit point, Kyoshi swarmed the red portals close to Kakashi again and began attacking the teenager with the teenager's own techniques. The red portals sent out only parts of jutsus since the purple portals had only absorbed what had hit them, but it was still effective. Lasers of water, fire, and lightning flashed out and around Kakashi randomly, causing the teenager to retreat again. Kakashi's eye narrowed in Kyoshi's direction. Kyoshi deactivated the red portals and pushed out a series of purple and red wisps out of his eyes, ready for what the teenager had in mind. It seemed like Kakashi had finally concluded that the portals could not be harmed. Kyoshi would have to be attacked directly. Kakashi made a few hand signs and then sent out a huge blasting spout of water toward Kyoshi. It was slow enough that Kyoshi could have dodged, but this was a demonstration. Kyoshi did something different this time. Instead of making a purple portal to make a water-filled bubble, Kyoshi connected a purple portal to a red portal inside his golden realm. When the portals were activated, this would make an instant transfer between them, instead of something delayed. 2 human-sized portals flared to life at the same, one purple, which Kyoshi formed in front of him as a shield, and one red, which Kyoshi flipped around and sent up to hover in the sky. The purple portal swallowed the water. At the same time, the red portal sent the swallowed water towards Kakashi. The nice thing about sending out a technique through a portal was that Kyoshi could rotate and move the portal how he wanted. When Kakashi moved to get out of the way of the water blast, Kyoshi turned the portal like a hose nozzle after him. Kyoshi ended the technique when the water attack was completely swallowed. His chakra was half gone. This was a lot more than he could have ever done as a toddler, but the portals took a lot of energy. His breath was becoming labored. What else could he demonstrate? As Kakashi rushed toward him, Kyoshi made a new set of interconnecting portals. Time to teleport. Interconnected portals were the only portals that Kyoshi could enter. Since interconnected portals bypassed the Golden Realm, the rules changed. The technique worked on his body, just like everything else. He had to be careful though. An interconnected portal still only worked one way. Once you entered, you had to go all the way through. It would also only transport the parts of your body that were in its range. When he entered, Kyoshi needed to make sure that the portal was big enough, and that he kept all his arms and legs tucked in. Due to the danger, his father had been tense when Kyoshi discovered and practiced this. His father sometimes told Kyoshi that maybe it was better to forget about the technique. But Kyoshi had loved it too much. Teleporting was fun, and it could end up saving his life sometime. A purple portal appeared in front of him, and a red portal appeared far across the field where Kyoshi had stationed a red wisp just for this purpose. The purple human-sized portal blocked Kakashi's path to him, and before the teenager could move around it, Kyoshi stepped through the backside of the purple portal, and out of the back of the red one across the field. Kyoshi immediately deactivated both portals after exiting, just in case Kakashi decided to follow him through. Kyoshi then did 2 other teleportations, playing cat and mouse with the Kakashi until he was out of chakra. The boy surrendered then. Thankfully, Kakashi acquiesced. As they walked back over to the group who had been observing the fight, the Hokage clapped. That was very impressive. Kyoshi nodded, exhausted and a bit unbalanced. A bed sounded really good right now. It's definitely a unique ability, Shikaka Nara stated. Yes, the Hokage agreed. I don't think any of us has seen something quite like it. Is this your eye's only ability? Kyoshi shrugged. It's the only one that I know of, the Hokage nodded. Keep it secret for now. The council and I will discuss it. Kiyoshi nodded. Akio smiled and gave him back his glasses. Kiyoshi fell asleep the minute they got home. Itachi didn't ask questions the next afternoon. Yesterday was the first time that Kiyoshi had not shown up for training. Kiyoshi gave an explanation that fighting another person had left him exhausted. The Uchiha had just nodded. They continued with their training, getting back to their routine. Kiyoshi would teach Itachi different moves with the sword, and Itachi in turn would teach him sound and sight stealth along with long-range throwing. They would then fight and play ninja games to test their skills. They were both improving quickly because of this. A day later, Kiyoshi engraved his sword. Testing the sword seal on the green field by his house, Kiyoshi found it worked perfectly. All he had to do was send pure chakra into the seal, and it would transform the pure chakra into lightning which would bolt out from the sword's tip at incredible speed. Kiyoshi needed to wait for the academy year to end to become a ninja. During this time, Akio had him study and pass the academy written exam, which basically consisted of ninja terms, math, geography, and history. Kiyoshi had already learned most of it from the library, so it wasn't too difficult. Once Kiyoshi saved up enough money, he also bought 7 knives which he engraved. 3 knives had a seal that acted like a grenade. The seal could hold any form of chakra within it, which could then be activated with spiritual chakra at a distance. 2 of his other knives had seals that coated the blade with sharpening chakra which could pierce armor or harden skin. His last 2 blades had a seal that made the entire blade incorporeal. It resembled what the cloaked rock ninja had done. Basically, you activated the seal, which allowed the blade to pass through solid defenses, then you would deactivate it with spiritual chakra, which would cause damage. It took weeks of practice to get competent using the knives, but the results were promising. Kiyoshi was called to the Hokage's office, once it was reported just how extensive and useful his seal knowledge was. Apparently, the seals were not common. After some persuasion, Kiyoshi agreed to make a book of seals for Konoha's archives. If he expected to be taught techniques from Konoha, then he should be willing to share information in return. Kiyoshi, however, made the argument that it would be a fair exchange. For every seal he shared, he would be able to pick out a similar rank technique from Konoha to have. Before, it was understood that if he ever quit the military, then anything he learned inside it was to be kept secret. Not obeying this rule meant he would become a criminal. Now, though, he could take a few techniques from Konoha, and use and teach them as his very own. The Hokage agreed to the arrangement. Academy graduation finally came, and Kiyoshi was both excited and nervous. This was the day he was going to start official duties and finally meet his team. Akio refused to tell him who his teammates were. 2 days ago the man broke the news that he was going to be the team's sensei, but he said that Kiyoshi would have to wait for further information. Kiyoshi was still curious. What kind of people would his teammates be? Would they get along? Would any of his teammates be from any of the major clans? At least Akio was going to be his sensei. That was good news. The man had become a meaningful figure in his life. He was like a surrogate father. Now his caretaking duties would simply extend to training and missions as well. Walking through the village, Kiyoshi and Akio headed to Training Ground 2. This was where their team would meet. It would be their team's personal training ground until he and his teammates were promoted to Chunin. A teenage girl was already waiting there, sitting on the grass. She had brown shoulder-length hair and was wearing a brown sleeveless jacket with a fur hood. Her cheeks had red triangles on them, and in her lap rested a small gray and white puppy. "Are you Emi?" Akio asked when they were a few yards away. The girl looked up and nodded. Her face held a solemn note to it, almost as if she was depressed. "It's good to meet you, Emi. My name is Akio. I am the sensei for this team, and this is Kiyoshi. He will be one of your teammates." The teenager looked at Kiyoshi. She didn't seem surprised by his age, that or she didn't care. Kiyoshi waved, and the older girl tilted her head up slightly in greeting. Akio looked around the clearing. "Well, I guess we just need to wait for our last team member." Itachi walked toward Training Ground 2, confused. Actually, a lot of the academy graduates were confused. 2 days ago the instructors had passed 10 students to graduate. 10. It was a strange number. The academy had always graduated up to a number divisible by 3. The lowest scores always had to wait till the next year. But for some reason this time was different. Every single person who had passed their exams had been called to be put on a team. As they called out the teams, Itachi had been the one left out. For a moment the Uchiha thought that they had decided to put him into a personal apprenticeship, but his theory was disproved when he was told to meet his team at a different location. Walking to the place instructed, Itachi wondered at the situation. Who were his teammates if it was none of the graduates? Was it a more advanced team that was missing a member? Coming into the grass clearing, Itachi saw 3 people sitting on the grass. He froze when he saw one of them. It was Kiyoshi. The olive-skinned boy was also wearing a ninja headband. How was that possible? The boy had never attended the academy. Kiyoshi was a mystery. Itachi had been greatly surprised by his skill the first time they met. No one else his age could compete with him. Kiyoshi was even better than him in some areas. Itachi had wondered many times about the boy's identity, but felt it was better to observe than ask. Kiyoshi was someone important. The amount of umbu always shadowing the boy attested to that. Itachi was a natural censor, so he could easily detect the Umbu operatives. They hadn't attempted to hide their auras. Itachi's high level of spiritual chakra brought great pride to his father and clan. Spiritual chakra was needed to perform genjutsu. The Sharingan enhanced genjutsu. If an Uchiha had a high spiritual chakra, then with the Sharingan, their genjutsu could be unstoppable. It was one of his father's great hopes. Itachi knew that Kyoshi had high spiritual chakra as well. The boy had a strong natural aura. He could always sense him before any of the Umbu. This created a problem whenever he and Kyoshi practiced stealth. They both had needed to learn how to expand their auras before they could truly test their skills. They were both competent in the technique now. It was now part of their routine to rely on their physical senses, playing hide and seek, surprising and attacking each other from hiding. Itachi appreciated the practice, even if Kyoshi had a devious side that made him flinch. Itachi really hated lightning bolts. They were his bane. A few weeks ago Kyoshi had started to use a long-range sword lightning technique that made the Uchiha spasm just thinking about it. He'd been caught by it many times. Itachi waved at the lighting monster, and Kyoshi waved back, looking just as surprised as he was. Then they both smiled. If Kyoshi was on his team, it was a pleasant surprise. Kyoshi had become someone that he looked forward to seeing, even more than his friend Shui. Kyoshi was also someone outside of the clan that his father approved of, which was rare. Itachi had been reluctant to tell his father about his new training partner, but when he had, his father had not only not rebuked him but had actually seemed pleased by the news. Did his father know about Kyoshi's abilities? That had to be the case. He had recognized Kyoshi's name. His father must believe that the boy would make a great ally in the future or that Kyoshi would help Itachi grow stronger. The clan came first. Only things that benefited it were considered. The fact that his father knew Kyoshi added to the boy's importance. Just who was he? Why had he not come to the village until now? When Itachi reached the group, the adult, which Itachi assumed was his sensei, waved. Hello, you must be Itachi. Itachi nodded. Well, why don't you come sit down? The black-haired man gestured. Now that we're all here we can start with some introductions. The group formed a circle. I'll start, the adult said. My name is Akio Zambura, but you can call me Akio-sensei. I am 27 years old, and I've been a jonin for 5 years. I like music and reading. This is my first genin team, but I've led other teams in the past. My dream is to protect Konoha. Okay, why don't you go next? Akio pointed to Itachi, who was to the left of him. Itachi nodded. My name is Itachi Uchiha, he stated flatly. I am 6 years old and I am the heir to the Uchiha clan. I like to train and spend time with my brother Sasuke. My dream is for there to be peace in the world. Akio smiled. That's a nice dream, Itachi. He then nodded toward the girl in their group. Okay, you go next. The girl shifted slightly and held her dog tighter. My name is Emi Inuzuka, she said, tense. I am part of the Inuzuka clan. I am 14 years old, and I have been a genin for 2 years. My team members were killed on a mission 3 months ago. This is why I am here. My companion was also killed. When she said this, her eyes teared up. She nodded down at the gray and white puppy in her arms. This is my new companion Koru. He is a young Niken, but will be very powerful once he is grown and fully trained. He is what keeps me going. At this, Koru yipped in acknowledgement and licked the girl's arm. This caused Emi to wipe her eyes and smile softly. The rest of the team didn't know what to say. Losing teammates had to be a lot like losing a family member. Losing her dog had to hurt even more. And Inuzuka and their dog were practically inseparable. I'm sorry that happened, Akio said solemnly after a moment of silence. Welcome to the team, Emi. Akio then nodded to Kyoshi, deciding it would be best to move on and take pressure off the girl. Okay, why don't you tell us about yourself? Kyoshi nodded. Akio had told him that it was fine to tell his teammates about his past and dojutsu. Teammates were supposed to trust each other, and his dojutsu would help him on missions. Still, Kyoshi decided to keep things simple. My name is Kyoshi Hirano. The ninja registry had needed a family name, so Kyoshi had made one up recently. I came to this village a few months ago, and I am currently living with Akio-sensei. I like to train and eat ice cream. The last part was true. Rosie's Cold Sweets had the best ice cream he had ever tasted. Maybe it was something about this world, but he had never been so addicted to something. I also like to be in nature, and my dream is to protect others and help bring peace to the world. Kyoshi and Itachi looked at each other at this. They both had similar goals. The elemental nations, even in times of peace, were full of violence and pain. Opposing nations still skirmished or attacked in stealth. The land was also full of missing nin and bandits. Kyoshi hoped that one day everyone would learn to live peacefully with one another. He wanted to be a part of making that happen. Oh, and I'm 6 years old, Kyoshi added. Kyoshi's birthday had been last week. Akio had bought a cake and had gotten him a gallon of his favorite ice cream to celebrate. The man was observant. It was also the day he had been given his headband. All right, very good, Akio said after the introductions were over. Well, I guess the only thing now is to have the team test. Team tests are for the Jonin senseis to make sure that their students have what it takes to be genin. I have little doubt in your ability, the man said. Itachi, I am told that you are top in your class, and Emi, you already have 2 years of experience. And I have seen Kyoshi's skills. I think for the test, it would be best for you to fight each other. This will give me the chance to observe you, and for you to become familiar with your teammates' abilities. The students nodded. For the next hour, they had a total of 3 matches. The first was Itachi versus Kyoshi. This basically consisted of what they did every day. Itachi and Kyoshi fought with swords while simultaneously throwing projectiles. Itachi would also send out fire jutsus from his mouth or hands while Kyoshi sent out lightning bolts from his sword. Kyoshi still could outmaneuver Itachi with the sword, but Itachi was better at long range. They were equal in speed. This made it anyone's match. Kyoshi got hit with one of Itachi's fireballs, and Kyoshi surrendered. If it had been full-powered, he would have been disabled. The next match was Itachi versus Emi. Before getting up, Emi left Koru by the sidelines to watch. Koru barked in frustration. He was still too young and untrained to fight. The puppy obeyed though and settled to growl in Itachi's direction. When Emi and Itachi started to fight, the puppy snarled louder and literally shook with the urge to rush forward. Kyoshi thought it was cute. He was glad Emi had someone so fiercely loyal to her. Kyoshi tried to pet Koru to calm him down, but the puppy didn't respond, standing rigged and watching the fight intently. Emi was fast and very skilled. She was quick on her feet and kept Itachi on his toes. She could also extend her fingernails into claws, which was pretty cool. Emi's fought using mainly taijutsu and thrown projectiles. She also knew a technique that shook the ground when she slammed her foot down. Eventually, though, Itachi got the upper hand and hit her in the back with his blunted ninjato. The fight was over. The last match was Emi versus Kyoshi. The match went about the same as the last one. Emi was fast, but she soon left herself open and got hit with a lightning bolt. The match ended. Luckily, the girl didn't seem to mind that she had lost again against a 6-year-old. She just blankly told Kyoshi it was a good match and went back to her puppy. The next few weeks were spent training and doing D-rank missions together. In training, Akio taught them tree walking, water walking, stealth, and team strategy. He also taught them how to combat faster opponents in taijutsu. Due to Itachi's and Kyoshi's chakra control, it didn't take them long to learn tree and water walking, and Emi already knew how to do it. In the other areas, it took more time. Akio was faster, quieter, and more knowledgeable than any of them. He was a good opponent and helped them figure out their strengths and weaknesses. During this time, Kyoshi thought about telling Itachi and Emi about his dojutsu. His dojutsu had a lot of uses. His team should learn to work with it. Still, it never seemed like the time or place. The team had many other things to learn. It took 3 weeks for the subject to be brought up. It happened on a D-rank mission. D-rank missions were chores or basic tasks that civilians hired ninjas to do within the village. Most D-rank missions could be done by civilian workers, but ninjas could do them faster and cheaper. The missions taught genin how to work with their teammates in real-life situations. On their way back from one of their missions, Koru asked a question. This wasn't surprising. Out of all the team members, Koru was the most curious and expressive. Emi would often answer the puppy's questions mentally, but when the answer needed another's input, she would speak the question to the group. Koru wants to know why you always wear sunglasses, Kyoshi. Emi said emotionlessly as they walked through the village. Kyoshi blinked at her, and then looked at the small puppy. The puppy was staring down at him, perched happily on Emi's shoulder and wagging his short tail. Kyoshi then looked to Itachi and Akio. Both were also curious about what he would say. Kyoshi sighed. It was as good of a time as any. I wear sunglasses to hide my eyes, he said. I have a unique dojutsu. Dojutsus I've heard are rare, so I don't like drawing attention to myself. Itachi was so surprised at the explanation that he stopped walking. The group stopped and looked back at him. The Uchiha blinked away his shock and quickly caught up. You have a dojutsu, Kyoshi? He asked in wonder, not quite believing it. Kyoshi nodded. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Itachi looked away and walked in silence for a moment. He then turned back. Have you activated it? Do you know what it does? There was great curiosity in his voice now. Yes, Kyoshi said in answer to both questions. This surprised Itachi even more. The Uchiha have a dojutsu too, but most cannot activate at such a young age. I do not expect to be able to activate mine for some time. Itachi then studied Kyoshi more closely. Everything made sense now. The Umbu his father's knowledge, who else knows about this? Not very many people, Akio answered from the back, cutting in. Kyoshi is only allowed to tell the team about this, so don't spread it around. The man then looked at Kyoshi. Perhaps you can show your dojutsu abilities during training tomorrow? Kyoshi nodded. The next day was spent explaining and demonstrating his dojutsu. Itachi, Koru, and even Emi seemed fascinated. After that, Kyoshi started to use his dojutsu on the team's D-rank missions. The first mission he used it on was on a large hornet hive that they had to exterminate from someone's barn. Instead, of putting the hornets asleep with gas, Kyoshi simply swallowed the nest up with a purple portal. The next mission, he used his Dojutsu to transport eggs from a chicken farm on the village outskirts to a grocery store in the village center. Instead of worrying about keeping the farmer's wagon smooth and steady the whole way, Kyoshi just pushed the wagon into a large purple portal and had the wagon come out later from a red one at their destination. It was pretty handy, his teammates agreed. 1 month later, they got their first C-rank mission. Akio was holding a mission scroll when the 3 students arrived for morning training. "Good news, guys," he said cheerfully. "We got a new mission." The children all groaned internally. Akio seemed to enjoy it when they got difficult jobs, especially the disgusting slimy ones. The happy demeanor was not a good sign. Don't give me that," the man chirped, reading their blank expressions perfectly. "You'll enjoy this one." The students didn't look convinced. "It's a C rank," the man tempted. That got the Genin's attention. "Come sit down, and we will do a mission briefing," the man said, smiling at their surprise. C rank missions were usually located outside of the village. They were missions where you could face C rank threats. The students gathered around and sat down on the grass in a circle. "Do you know what whisper cats are?" the man asked. The students were quiet for a moment, then Itachi answered. "They are Niniko-sensei. They are ninja cats with high speed and stealth capabilities." Akio nodded. "That is correct, Itachi. Whisper cats are one of the 5 major breeds of Ninikos in the Fire Nation. They are one of the fastest and most stealthy. Whisper cats are also a breed of cat that is resistant to many types of poisons. It is because of this resistance that we are being called on this mission. Medical teams need whisper blood to make certain types of poison antidotes. The blood can be used for other things as well. Our job is to catch a whisper cat and extract this material." Pausing, and seeing that his students understood, Akio then continued. "Whisper cats can be deadly. They used to hold great animosity towards Konoha for being hunted. But many years ago the Hokage and the Whisper clan came to a peaceful arrangement. The Whisper clan said that if a ninja was able to catch one of them, then the caught member would freely let 2 vials of blood be drawn. In exchange, a ninja could not kill or permanently harm a clan member and must let them go free afterward. If they did this, the Whisper cat would not retaliate and would also show mercy." The Hokage agreed to this proposal. This arrangement gives both the Cat Clan and Konoha ninjas a chance to test their skills. It also gives us the chance to obtain the valuable blood without causing war and animosity. Akio held out 3 pieces of paper. "Here is your packing list. We will be traveling to Soraku. Plan for 2 weeks. Bring anything else you think you will need. We will meet at Konoha's gates in the morning." The following day the team headed out. Kyoshi was both nervous and excited. Konoha was a place of security, but the desire to explore and see new places was strong. Soraku was about 2 days away traveling at a jog. Team 2 could probably make it there faster, but Akio said it was best to take it slow. This mission wasn't urgent. It was best to keep their chakra levels high in case they met bandits or missing ninjas along the way. They traveled in a defensive formation, each keeping an eye out for dangers and threats. Kyoshi and Itachi had recently learned scanning techniques. Itachi moved his spiritual chakra to left, and Kisohi moved his spiritual chakra to the right, covering different areas as a team so that they could scan the area around them in a bigger radius. They condensed their spiritual chakra mostly to the border of the skin range so that they could feel auras at a far distance. Only a little bit of energy was kept near them in case of an emergency. Ninjas with an expanded aura could pass through their skin bubble without being detected. They had to be prepared if that happened. Spiritual chakra was needed to perform basic techniques. This included body enhancement. Because of this, Kyoshi and Itachi also kept some of the energy near them for practical uses as well. Itachi was carrying quite a large pack on his shoulders. With the added weight, it would be hard to keep up their current jogging pace naturally. Kyoshi had offered to put everyone's packs in his dimensional realm at the gate, but Akio dissuaded against the action. It was a bad practice to give all the supplies to one team member, let alone someone who would store things in a place no one else could access. If Kyoshi was killed or fell unconscious, then the rest of the team would be left stranded. It was best not to get into the habit. Carrying large packs was also good exercise. Akio had said this with a raised brow, seeing that Kyoshi only carried a small, almost unnoticeable pack, but Kyoshi ignored the slight. He wasn't lazy. The man was just jealous. It was common for Akio to be a little annoyed with Kyoshi's dojutsu now. The man liked putting the team in situations that caused improvisation and struggles, but Kyoshi would often solve the problems by using his portals, using their unique aspect abilities and pulling the helpful things out of them. For the past month, Kyoshi had begun storing and compiling many things inside his golden realm. It was good to be prepared for any situation. He'd learned this the hard way. Having many different tools on hand often foiled Akio's plans, pushing the Jonin to be more creative in his attacks. Akio was strong. Even with Itachi, Kyoshi, and Emi all working together, he was very hard to beat. The man always matched his students' speed, strength, and intellect perfectly, no matter how fast they improved. The man's strength caused Kyoshi to worry. Despite the competitive nature, it was obvious the man was holding back. Akio was an A-rank ninja. That was an achievement, but there were many A-rank shinobi in the world. On top of that, there were S-rank ninjas. Kiyoshi had a long way to go to be able to defend himself properly. His team and current anonymity was the only thing that gave him the courage to currently go outside the village. Kiyoshi pushed his sunglasses closer to his face as it started to rain. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as the water came down in sheets. Because of the miserable conditions, Akio had them make camp early in a mountain cave. The cave seemed to be a common rest spot for those traveling on the road. It was decked out with log seats and a circular fire hole. The team put down their packs and changed into dry clothes. The only person who didn't change was Akio. The man was a skilled water ninja. Shifting water away from himself was one of the man's many skills. Because of this, their sensei was the one to go out in the harsh weather to gather some firewood. Setting down the freshly cut logs, Akio then sucked the moisture out of them, causing the logs to crack and split with dryness. Don't want the cave to fill up with smoke, Akio shrugged at Kiyoshi's astonished expression. Kiyoshi nodded, a bit wary. Akio had never shown this ability before. Can you suck moisture out of anything? Akio smirked. Yes, but don't worry. I won't turn you into a prune, not unless you really annoy me, Kiyoshi stayed serious, ignoring the teasing nature. Is there a way to defend against it? This technique might be something common among water ninjas. It could be deadly, Akio scratched his chin in thought. Water extraction is mostly performed with spiritual chakra, so physical barriers have little effect. It can also be performed at great distances, so running away is not an option. The best thing to do is to treat the technique like a genjutsu. Physical chakra trumps spiritual chakra. If you are able to recognize the technique for what it is, then you will be able to dispel it. The trick is not to panic and to react quickly, Kiyoshi nodded. Remember, Akio said, getting into lecture mode, looking to Itachi and Emi as well who were also listening. Techniques that have an invisible connection to the user almost always need large amounts of spiritual chakra to perform. If you destabilize this spiritual chakra, the technique will fail. This is why elemental clones are so easy to destroy. It was also why powerful attacks are usually straight and direct. The more powerful the attack, the more spiritual chakra you will need to move it around. The exception to this rule is if the technique is bloodline limit. Akio continued. Bloodline abilities are all unique, which is why they are so feared and sought after. Sharingan illusions are very hard to break out of, and Kiyoshi's portals cannot be stopped after they are formed. The Inuzuka clan can also track and smell things that no other ninja can, no matter how much they train or enhance their senses with chakra. This makes you all very powerful. The three students looked at each other at this. The best thing to do if you face someone with a bloodline limit is to kill or disable the user quickly, Akio said. Especially if the bloodline is dangerous and unknown. If you have a bloodline, expect this quick, direct aggression in return. The three students nodded gravely. They spent the rest of the evening in silence, staring into the warm, mesmerizing flames of the campfire, while the rain continued to fall outside. They set up their bedrolls as it grew dark, and Itachi, Emi, and Akio heated up water by the fire to give heat and moisture to their dehydrated meals. Kiyoshi in turn opened a red portal, dropping out a fresh salad, a hot roll and soup, and a side dish of ice cream. Itachi, Emi, and Akio all rolled their eyes at this, going back to their meals with amused exasperation. Koru, however, immediately took this as his cue and hopped out of Emi's arms, sitting down in front of Kiyoshi and wagging his tail across the floor expectantly. Kiyoshi sighed and dropped out some fresh raw meat for the puppy. Kiyoshi had once offered food to the puppy to get Koru to like him. Now Kiyoshi couldn't eat anything without the expectation of a treat. Shaking his head and smiling at the cute, ravaging actions, he was starting to regret bribing the animal. Now that he was a ninja, food had to be bought with his own money. Hopefully, they would continue to get C-ranked missions. Otherwise, he would go broke. You know, you won't always be able to do that, Akio said conversationally. Kiyoshi opened his eyes from the bliss of cold ice cream dissolving in his mouth. What do you mean? He asked the man, seeing that the statement was directed at him. Your portals emit large amounts of energy, Akio explained. It is a strong beacon to anyone around. On more dangerous missions, you will need to be more stealthy. Kiyoshi looked down at his ice cream, frowning. I don't think I can do that, he said. The cold heaven gods would not permit it. Akio laughed. If I can survive without coffee, then you can survive without ice cream for a few days. Kiyoshi scowled at the mockery. Coffee is easy to make on the road. You could have it if you wanted. Akio shook his head. Not the way I like it, he said. We all need to make sacrifices, Kiyoshi sighed. It was obvious that the man was right, but that didn't mean he had to like it. Very well. I will do things traditionally when necessary, he grumbled. And I'll carry soldier pills and water in my pack just in case. Akio smiled. That's my boy. The next 2 days were spent traveling. Nothing redirected them from their course, and they arrived at Soraku on schedule. Soraku was a place full of black market dealers and criminals. The city was run down and was located out on a harsh desert plain. It didn't look enticing, even from a distance. There was a mutual understanding between the Hokage and the city. The criminals inside would not harm those in the military unless they were directly attacked or their property was destroyed. Kiyoshi was relieved at hearing this. It was said that many in Soraku were high-ranked. Almost all were unregistered ninjas. Unregistered ninjas were those who could use chakra, but did not cooperate and list their abilities and actions in military accounts. This title went to missing ninjas, skilled bandits, and crime lords. Chakra citizen was the title given to chakra civilians, retired ninjas, and active ninjas. They were the law-abiding chakra users of a country. To be law-abiding in the land of fire, you had to update Konoha's intelligence every year on your skills and actions if you were above D rank. This made it harder for enemy ninjas to infiltrate and pose as citizens. The third Hokage kept an eye on those with ability. He did not demand service or force techniques to be shared, like many other Kages, but registering your abilities and being under the occasional watch was expected. Chakra citizens carried a picture ID with them that would prove their identity and intentions. To infiltrate the Fire Nation as a citizen, it took time and dedication, or you had to be extremely good at hiding your chakra. There were many ways of exposing it if one was suspected. The Hokage had little tolerance for things that affected security. The only reason why Soroku was still standing was the smuggled weapons and secrets the criminals inside offered from foreign lands in exchange for leniency. Also, the crime bosses of the city all agreed that if one of their members tried to steal from or attack a law-abiding citizen from the Land of Fire, then the military would be free to arrest or kill the perpetrator. They would not give aid. Most fights came from power struggles between themselves anyway. They did the Hokage a favor by getting rid of competition. Soroku's existence had benefits and downsides. It was a stain that the Hokage tolerated at the moment. It was also where many weak whisper cats resided. Which was why they were here. Powerful whisper cats usually did not lower themselves to interact with humans, let alone criminals. Only the lowest of the clan were curious or enticed enough to work as mercenary spies. This made Soroku a prime place for genin to hunt the creatures. Akio told them all the politics and attributes of both Soroku and the whisper cats during breakfast. They would need this information to form a proper hunting strategy for the mission. The hunt was going to be done entirely by Emi, Itachi, and Kiyoshi. It was a training exercise just as much as an assignment. Their sensei would only provide aid if a criminal decided to intervene or if the situation during the cat hunt became serious. Kiyoshi was grateful for the backup support. Entering the city, many powerful flares of chakra were felt in every direction, indicating that strong techniques were being used throughout the city. Many criminals near them were also enhancing their bodies with chakra and stood large and menacing. Thankfully, once they saw the group's headbands, most made themselves scarce. Akio led them to a more abandoned part of the city and set up base inside a rusted metal building. The building was tall and was missing its entire front side. Hopping up to the top floor, it gave them a clear vantage point of the city. Buildings spread out to the distance in every direction. One of the things that surprised Kiyoshi about the Naruto world was just how large cities and capital villages were. Back on Earth, the TV show usually only zoomed into bits and pieces, and when it did zoom out, the animators must have been too lazy to draw all the buildings, because places never looked this expansive. Why was Konoha called a village anyway? The term must have some sentimental value because it was even bigger than the city before him. That shouldn't be a surprise. It was said that thousands of shinobi fought each other during wars and many of those shinobi resided in their country's village. Add in all the civilians, training grounds, farms, and marketplaces, the capital military base was bound to be large. I turn this mission over to you, my dear students. Akio's voice knocked Kiyoshi out of his thoughts. He could sit, gaze, and think on settlements later. What supplies do we have to work with? Kiyoshi asked the man. Akio was carrying a large pack. The boy suspected that the man had brought other things for this mission that were not on the packing list. Akio smiled. Observant are we? Yes, I brought some things that might help. The man set down his pack and began to pull out items. This is a gas grenade, Akio said, showing them a hand-sized metal container. Pull this pin out and gas will release and cover a 10-yard radius after 3 seconds. The gas will make a whisper cat dizzy after a breath, and pass out after 3. You only get one since this type of gas is expensive. It is one of the only poisons that a whisper cat is not completely immune to. It is deadly to anything else, so don't breathe it in or release it near another human or animal. If you do, notify me immediately. I have the antidote. The students nodded. Akio then pulled out 3 green marbles. These are sound pellets. This type of sound pellet will emit a high-frequency sound for 10 seconds when stepped on. Whisper cats have sensitive ears. The sound will cause a great pain, but will not cause lasting damage. Remember, whatever you do, do not permanently hurt the whisper cat you hunt. This will cause problems. What if it's an accident? Kiyoshi asked. He would be as careful as possible, but you couldn't predict and control everything. Especially since there were no dueling terms of surrender. Itachi had asked this at breakfast. It was explained that a whisper cat didn't need to surrender if they were hit with a dampen technique, or any other type of hypothetical victory. You truly had to subdue the cat to win. Will it cause war? Akio shook his head. No. Both sides understand that mistakes happen. Depending on the nature of the mistake, will determine what compensation is required. Just do your best, and don't be rash and brutal. The students nodded. Good. The last thing I have is a Churka ceiling tag, Akio said, pulling it out. This will seal a Whisper Cat's chakra if you manage to stick it on and activate it. When this seal is activated, it will connect to the nearest chakra core and will weave the activator's chakra around it in such a way that it will hold up against the chakra 3 times its strength. If your opponent is C rank, then you will need to send a third of your chakra into the seal, half if you want to be safe. If you manage to catch a B rank Whisper Cat, then more than one of you will most likely be required to give proper strength. The students nodded again in understanding. Akio then sat down cross-legged and leaned his pack against one of the pillars in the building. I now leave the rest up to you, he said. Feel free to ask any questions, but I will not provide physical aid. The students looked at each other. Well, the first problem is finding a Whisper Cat, Kyoshi said, stating the obvious. We know what Whisper Cats look like, but we don't know the scent or aura signature. Emi furrowed her brow. True. Cats, in general, have a unique scent, but there are many varieties within the city. Koru and I can track and get on one of the trails, but there is no guarantee it will be a whisper. We have 0 experience with them. Itachi nodded as well. Same for spiritual chakra. Cats have unique auras, but the exact species we will not be able to tell until we can compare them. It is a start though, Kyoshi said, and his teammates nodded. Once we know the exact aura and scent of a Whisper Cat, we will be able to track down one with ease. Even if the Naniko breed was known for stealth, it was almost impossible to mask spiritual chakra and your scent at the same time. Even S-rank ninjas were unable to do it. Effective scent hiding techniques required spiritual chakra to either deceive the tracker or to keep your scent from escaping your body. If an enemy tried to hide their scent, then a sensor would be able to pick them out. And vice versa, if an enemy tried to hide from a sensor, then their scent would be exposed. Sensors and Inuzuka combined made an ultimate tracking and scouting team. Our main problem will be being strong and fast enough to catch a cat before it burrows into a place we cannot reach, Kyoshi concluded. They were not allowed to destroy anything in the city. It was another hindering restriction. Despite the state of some areas, criminals still viewed all the rundown real estate as their property. It was part of the deal to respect it. Kyoshi turned to Akio. Do the Whisper Cats know that we are not allowed to break things here? If so, then physically hiding in a place too small for humans to reach might be their main tactic of escape. Akio smiled. Yep. Why do you think I planned on staying here for an entire week? You can't solve your problems by brute force. It's going to take speed, stealth, and skill to succeed. Isn't it great? Kyoshi rolled his eyes and then focused back on the planning group. We will need to catch a Whisper Cat by surprise and surround it, blocking off any escape, Itachi said. Kyoshi nodded. And we need to capture it using passive attacks. Itachi rubbed his chin. Kyoshi's portals and lightning bolt technique are perfect for this mission. If used right, they will be effective in stunning or trapping a Whisper Cat without permanent damage. I can use Genjutsu as my main attack, and Emi can use her hands and body. Kyoshi and Emi nodded. A purple portal would freeze a cat in time, and lighting would physically seize up a creature's muscles, even at low levels. Genjutsu was simply illusions of pain or threats. And Emi was very skilled at body enhancement. If she could get her hands on a cat, she would probably be able to hold it long enough to put on a ceiling tag. I don't know if we should plan more than this, Itachi said. Since we don't know fully what to expect, it might be best to leave the rest up to instinct and quick thinking. Keep an eye out for signals from each other and stay sharp. Both Kyoshi and Emi nodded again. Should we track a cat's scent or aura? Emi asked. I think we should stay together. Itachi and Kyoshi nodded in agreement. This was a dangerous city. I think that scanning for auras would be best, Kyoshi said. With a skin bubble, Itachi and I can cover every direction at a large range. It will take less time. Emi nodded, not offended. We will need to be very quiet once we get close, she warned. Whisper Cats have excellent hearing, just like me and Koru. Which reminds me. We need a signal if we plan to use those sound pellets. Koru and I will need to know when to shield our ears. I really don't want to suffer the effects. Would shouting the word pellet be enough? Kyoshi asked. If we are in stealth, we can simply hold the pellet in front of you to see. Emi nodded and Koru barked. Itachi nodded in agreement as well. Good, Kyoshi said, grinning and rubbing his hands together in anticipation. Let's go hunting. The team spent the rest of the day tracking down the scents and auras of different cat breeds. Most Nanikos and Soraku were shy, fearful, or indignant. This made it challenging to get close. Getting close, however, was the only way to tell if a cat was a Whisper. The features of the breed were unique and distinct. Whisper Cats had large oversized ears and glowing blue fur. Whisper Cats were also one of the only creatures that had the ability to turn invisible. This was true invisibility. It wasn't an illusion that you could dispel. They had no luck that day, so they went back to the abandoned building and made camp. The next day, they continued their search. They tracked and sorted out more cat breeds until they finally landed success. Most C-ranked Whispers could only fade up to the point of being ghost-like. This made most visible. Once they caught sight of the glowing translucent blue creature, it immediately scurried down a small hole into the sewers. The team wasn't discouraged though. They now knew what type of aura and scent to look for. Kyoshi and Itachi scanned the surrounding area with a spiritual chakra. Kyoshi felt a similar aura of a different cat a half-mile away. Itachi didn't sense anything closer on his side, so they headed in Kyoshi's direction. They limited themselves to the abilities of a civilian, keeping their physical chakra sealed and undetectable. Kiyoshi and Itachi kept track of the cat using spiritual chakra. Right now the aura stayed still and in place. They lead the way until they came to the door of a large rusted warehouse. Kiyoshi told Emi with hand signs that the cat was inside and up in the rafters. Emi nodded. Itachi signaled that he would go left, Kiyoshi should go right, and Emi should stay and guard the door. There were many holes and high broken windows in the building. The Whisper Cat could escape in any direction. The team agreed. Kiyoshi crept around the side of the warehouse and entered a hole in the far right side corner of the building. Inside was empty and spacious. The day was overcast, so the holes in the walls only provided dim light inside. The glow of the Whisper Cat in the dark rafters was easy to see. They were lucky. It was sleeping and hadn't been alerted. Itachi climbed skillfully and silently through a broken window above. When the Uchiha was level and less than 20 feet away from the creature, he nodded. They were all in perfect position. Kiyoshi's heartbeat quickened as they got ready for action, unsheathing his sword. Kiyoshi and Itachi locked eyes. Itachi was about to make a hand signal to attack when he suddenly froze. His eye widened. This wasn't the time or place for practical jokes, so Kiyoshi immediately turned around to see what Itachi was looking at. Sitting in front of the hole that Kiyoshi had entered through was another Whisper Cat. This one was larger, being fluffier and thicker than the one they were hunting. It glowed brightly and stared back at Kiyoshi curiously with sparkling cyan eyes. What? When had the creature gotten there? No sound had been made. There was no aura either. Should he attack it? The cat was close for the taking, but the team also wasn't in a position to intercept it. Chasing it would also alert their original target. Looking up to a high window, Kiyoshi saw that Akio was watching like he always did. The man shadowed and kept an eye on them wherever they went. His sensei didn't seem alarmed by the situation, but his brow was furrowed, indicating that this was not a common occurrence. Kiyoshi shooed the smirking cat away with a silent hand gesture, indicating for it to go back outside. The glowing cat simply yawned and then proceeded to lick its paw, ignoring the command. Kiyoshi looked at Itachi, then at Emi, who was watching through a rusted hole in the warehouse door. Everything was still and silent. Nothing had been disturbed. Kiyoshi nodded to the Whisper Cat still sleeping in the rafters and signed that they should continue with the original mission. There was nothing they could do about the other Whisper Cat now. Itachi nodded and then made a specific attack sign. Kiyoshi obeyed and flared chakra into his sword, sending a lightning bolt towards their prey. The flare of chakra immediately woke the sleeping Whisper, but it wasn't fast or aware enough to dodge. The lightning hit the creature squarely in the chest and it fell from its perch. Itachi immediately blasted away from the window ledge and caught it mid-fall, hugging the creature tight to his chest. Emi was the one with the sealing tag, so seeing this she immediately rushed through the doors towards the place Itachi would land, pulling out the tag from her jacket. Just as she was about to slap the sealing tag on the twitching, struggling cat's stomach, a blue blur flashed by and snatched the tag from her fingers. Itachi then cried out in pain as a white energy beam hit him in the face. The attack caused the panicked cat to escape, scurrying out of the weakened grasp and beelining for the door. Kiyoshi was too focused on the attacker to follow it. Apparently, their observer found it in itself to interfere. Kiyoshi sent a bolt of lightning toward the smirking cat, and it dodged. Kiyoshi sent more bolts determinedly, making the annoying combatant retreat to the edge of the warehouse. Emi was in a defense position, covering Itachi, who was getting up from the floor, blinking away tears and trying to focus his vision. His face was red, and his eyes were bloodshot. Kiyoshi ran up to them. Are you okay? Itachi nodded, glaring at the glowing blue creature across the room, a few tears still leaking from his eyes. Cat's Emi snarled, her beast-like rage coming out. Koru growled in agreement from her shoulder. The amused Whisper Cat didn't seem affected by the hostility. It simply covered half the distance between them in a lazy trot and released the sealing tag it had stolen from its mouth, the seal floating gently to the floor. It then backed up and waited silently with a tilted gaze. What should we do? Kiyoshi asked, not taking his eyes off the creature. Hearing Kiyoshi's question, the Whisper crouched down playfully. It seems like the cat wants us to chase it, Itachi muttered. The cat smiled in confirmation. It might be trying to lead us into a trap, Emi said. Trying to catch us and humiliate us in front of all its cat friends. I wouldn't put it past it. Or it might just want to do something challenging and fun, Kiyoshi argued. In either case, we are going to have to deal with it. If not, it will just sabotage us again. It's a Whisper Cat, so why not try? Kiyoshi was actually kind of excited to chase something who wanted to be chased. It felt a little mean to hunt down and disturb things minding their own business. Itachi and Emi thought about it for a moment. Then they both nodded. Emi walked up and picked the offered sealing tag on the floor. The fact the cat had given it back was more indication that it wanted to play the game. Emi rushed at the cat, not retreating back to the group, the cat now only 3 yards away. The cat turned and ran up the wall, twisting in a spinning flip into the rafters. Kiyoshi attacked the cat with lightning bolts, lightning sizzling out along wooden beams. The glowing blue cat was fast and agile. It dodged the attacks with ease. I can't penetrate its mind with genjutsu, Itachi said, who was currently standing still beside Kiyoshi, concentrating hard. It has a strong shield. You two just try to grab it and throw it to me, Kyoshi said. He gave both Emi and Itachi a sign, and they nodded. Kyoshi was going to try to catch the Whisper Cat in a purple portal. Itachi and Emi chased the creature while Kyoshi continued to fire lightning bolts at it from a distance. The Whisper Cat never left the building, despite the many opportunities, zigzagging along the floor, walls, and beams, evading every attack that came its way. It sent out white energy beams from its fur on occasion, causing both Emi and Itachi to duck and retreat. Itachi enhanced his body and dashed straight at the Whisper Cat for the 5th time. When the Uchiha came close, Kyoshi yelled out pellet, waiting 2 seconds before stepping down on a green marble. Kyoshi couldn't hear anything, but the pellet seemed to work, the high-frequency sound making the Whisper Cat stumble. Itachi used this opening to grab one of the cat's hind legs and threw it into the air. Kyoshi spun a large purple portal in front of the airborne cat. The cat, however, blasted energy out of its fur and rocketed itself away. Kyoshi cursed. Your team knows how to work together. I'm impressed. A deep, mesmerizing voice commented. Kyoshi started and looked up at the cat now perched in the rafters. The sound had not echoed through the room nor gone through his ears, but the tone and direction were clear. Everyone paused to take a break after the failed portal attempt. The room was quiet and still except for labored breathing. Did you just speak to me? Kyoshi asked, instinctively portraying the question mentally. It wasn't a surprise that the cat could communicate through thoughts. Nenikos were intelligent, just like Ninkins. But this didn't feel like a genjutsu. No foreign energy was detected in his mind. Didn't you have to have a bloodline or some sort of special bond first to accomplish this otherwise? If not, then why did Koru never speak to him? Yes, I can speak into and hear your mind, the Whisper Cat affirmed. Most Nenikos need to form a contract bond to do so naturally, but I don't like to bind myself to humans. I have found a way around it. Kyoshi nodded, brow furrowed. So, why are you talking to me? Are you ready to give up? The cat smirked. No, Kyoshi sighed. Yeah, I was afraid of that. Honestly, I'm running out of ideas on how to catch you. You're skilled, and even if we do come up with something clever, I know you're holding back. The cat's movements were a bit too lazy at times to be something pushed to the limit. The confidence that the cat emitted was also a dead giveaway. It didn't seem arrogant. Could you just leave us alone? We can pick another target. I think you are above our abilities, the cat pondered the statement. You may be right. Perhaps we can make a deal? Kyoshi's eyes narrowed warily. What kind of deal? Whisper cats were supposed to be prideful, shy, or aloof. This cat, however, gave off an air of mischief and mystery. What did the cat want from him? The cat seemed to be talking to him specifically. Was this something to do with his dojutsu? I'll give you 2 vials of my blood, in exchange for 2 things. The cat said. I want you to imagine something for me, and I want you to keep a secret. Kyoshi blinked. Okay, that was unexpected. Is something wrong? Itachi's voice broke Kyoshi away from the cat. Both Itachi and Emi were staring at him with concern. It appeared that him silently staring and making varying expressions at the Whisper was disconcerting. They were supposed to be attacking it after all. The cat wants to make a deal.